What's going on, brothers? What is going on? It is your dude, Mr. International Passport, here again for yet another Future Classic live stream. Press A1 in the live stream chat if you can hear me loud and clear. Press A1 in the live stream chat if you can hear me loud and clear. Mayday, Mayday, check 1 2, check 1 2. How's my audio? Who's here? Aussie in the building. Okay. Ilya's in the building too. Fantastic, man. Fantastic. No, early stream, early stream. I think the first time ever I've done this early actually. But times are different, so we have to work with that. So we got a couple ones, Black Mind as well. Awesome. So let's get straight into it, brothers. So welcome to another Future Classic live stream. I'm your gracious host, Mr. International Passport. I want to say a huge thank you to those that have supported the channel over the past couple of years. And of course, welcome aboard the new people. I accept and I embrace you with open arms. When you come on the live stream, please hit the like button, show some support by hitting the PayPal, super chat, join the Patreon, and of course, book your IT consultations and cop the merch too. So let's get straight into it, brothers. I have a very special guest here, okay, called Mr. Black Mind, who is here to break down Saudi Arabia for us to an absolute T. Black Man, how you doing today, bro?
How's everything going, sir? And thank you for having me.
No problem, brother. No problem, brother. Welcome, brother. Welcome. So, Mr. Black Mind, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated, brother. Do you mind giving us a brief intro as to who you are, where you're from, and anything interesting about you, bro?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored, especially seeing your subscriber count. So uh, I'm an English teacher living in Saudi Arabia now. I'm in my 10th year at it. Um, I I was born and raised in the U.S. Since I have a channel, and some people want to dox, I can't say cities and things like that, but I grew up on the Gulf Coast and I was born and raised and grew up on the Gulf Coast. I went to Atlanta to go to Morehouse for college. I lived in Atlanta most of my life as an adult with two stints away from Atlanta. Then I got a job to come here to Saudi. And at that time, it was pretty much a no brainer. I had to take it. I wasn't on YouTube before when I lived in the States, but some friends of mine were, and I had a blog so under another name. And so I was advocating that the U.S. owed Black folks reparations. And being Muslim since 2002, I would tell the Muslims, look, we're well after 9/11 at this point. I'm telling y'all what they're going to do. You know, my people grew up with these folks. So what you need to do is hurry up and learn the self-defense laws of your state. Be ready to protect yourself. I was mostly talking about cyber vigilantes that were going to come after them. But some of those cyber vigilantes, they did make a few things difficult. So I realized that when I got this job offer, I need to go ahead and take it. And I did. And I have to say, it's generally life has gotten better since I came over here. Absolutely.
Wow, incredible, brother. Right. So, brother, you've been out there for 10 years in Saudi Arabia, brother, doing English teaching. So,
Yes, sir.
how did you first get that job in the first place, brother? Did they contact you via LinkedIn? Did you apply for it directly? How did you get the job in the first place, bro?
Truth be told, I went back to grad school to start doing what I wanted to do before I finished grad. In undergrad, I wanted to major in education, but at Morehouse, it probably still that way. But at the time in Morehouse, if you majored in education, you had to take a lot of your classes at Spelman. And this has something to do with why I'm doing red pill content now on YouTube. Um, when I discussed it with my folks just to get their advice, my mother said, listen, son, you don't want to cross register and take a lot of your courses at Spelman. If you, she said, looking like you do, you'll just get in trouble. They'll hold you back because of they'll assume certain things that you have in your mind, that you have in your head. And so uh, better to just go ahead and pick another major because you go through all this trouble at Spelman. Your professors are going to be hard on you. And then after you're done, you're a teacher. You won't make anything. And she also told me some things that these school boards were doing that I didn't know about at the time. She was in a position to know, but I wasn't. So I went back for grad school years later in the 2000s, and I finished. And then I I taught, a substitute taught, then taught. Then I got a non-teaching job where I was still training the newbies. So teaching kept popping up. And then when I lost that good job where I was training the new people, even though I was new, when I lost it, which was due to, it was like a political retaliation because Obama won the re-election around that time. So a week later, they called in all the northern whites, the ones they thought were liberal, and pretty much all the black folks except like one who was protected and another one that was not a U.S. citizen, so he couldn't vote. They made exceptions for them. So, you know, they put us out and they laid us off instead of really firing us. But a friend of mine found out that they somehow figured out I was Muslim. I never hid my race, but some of them figured out I was Muslim because I didn't drink and I didn't chase women. And we were working away from where we lived. So I said, okay, that's it. I taught again, but actually it was a miracle. I mean, I filled out a job application on his website, and I was working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet while being a teacher. So when I one night I was at my second job and I finished the shift. So I just asked him, look, let me just use the Wi-Fi here to finish this job application. And I kept getting interrupted because the other guy that was supposed to start the shift never showed up. So I left my application halfway done. And I kid you not, the day after the next, I still got the phone call asking, was I interested in teaching in Saudi? And I said, as long as I don't have to know Arabic, I'm game. And they said, nope, you don't have to know Arabic. And so I started the process and got all the paperwork. That took months, but I did it and got the passport back with the visa eventually, and caught a flight out here and started working.
Wow, incredible, brother, right? So obviously, brother, I think Saudi is a tax-free country, if I'm not mistaken, brother. So your income tax isn't taxed. So, brother, I'm guessing the salary you are earning right now compared to what you are earning in America, brother, is a lot more, particularly when you don't get taxed, right?
It's mostly the tax that makes it more, the lack of tax, I should say. I started off making what I would have made in the States, but there were several things. I mean, one, food at that time was, food at that time was a lot cheaper than what it is now. Clothes, not so much, but you know, I brought clothes with me from the States. So that high ticket item I didn't have. Housing was for native English speaking teachers. Housing was arranged because people who own properties here are not going to give you the right price if they can avoid it. They're going to raise the prices on you, and the companies know that. So we were in company housing. They called it a compound the first time, but it wasn't. But nonetheless, I'm just saying it was taken care of. So I literally paid for like my trips if I needed to take them, my groceries, and my food. Those literally were my expenses. And so I didn't have to pay tax. Now you do have to pay tax as a U.S. citizen if you make, I think it's something like 119 US dollars. If you make that abroad, you got to pay taxes to the States, or you show them that you pay taxes to another country. But if you're under that, then you're not liable to pay taxes to the States.
Amazing, amazing, brother, amazing. So now, brother, right? So obviously you're working in Saudi, brother. Tell us the work environment in the Saudi Arabian, country, brother. How's your work environment like? Can you break down? Is it like Western environments where there's a whole bunch of nonsense there, a woman trying to date you, gossiping, or are you left alone, right? While you do work, is it very strict? Break it down for us, brother, the working environment there.
Sure. For those that are wondering about it, really, the Gulf states are a pretty good place to work and teach on certain conditions. Now, some people are not going to live in accordance to the laws in a place like Saudi. And if they're not going to, then most of the time, and this is where things do get different, most Black folk that are not going to abide by the rules here just don't come. They don't even show up for the job. So we're not the troublemakers here. You do get, to be honest with you, the most disrespectful people that you get are going to be the Boer South Africans, the Dutch white South Africans. There are no British white South Africans here. All the white South Africans are Dutch. And they generally do get to be some of the most disrespectful. And either they're open with it or they're slick, but it's always that for the most part. I'm trying to remember one that didn't have some slick stuff to say about non-whites at some point in time. And so they're the main ones that'll come and act a fool. White Americans and white Canadians are probably going to be the second most likely to try to buck the rules and be dismissive of the fact that they're in somebody else's yard and they got to obey those rules. But if you can not fornicate and not drink, and most people can, then it's a pretty good place to work. As I stated, you don't pay taxes. You pay sales tax when you buy stuff. Everybody does, no matter your nationality. It's 15% flat. And that's a relatively new thing, but you don't pay an income tax. And then food is about medium price now. You got different options. So you can save fairly easily. And so if you can go by the rules, it's really not bad. And I've had a situation where with the men and the women were living close to each other, and this was about 2017. And so yeah, the ladies that were living, the lady teachers, they were getting kind of nervous and anxious, and they were complaining about feeling uncomfortable around the male teachers, but then they were complaining about not being approached too. So they were just neurotic about it. And this was right around the time that they started talking about putting Cosby on trial, and started talking about Me Too. So we men just got real silent, and we said very little to ladies. We simply we spoke only to the ones that we already knew, and we spoke as little as possible, or we spoke with witnesses around. Since there were cameras in the hallways of our residential building, if they spoke.
But in terms of the workplace, right? So obviously you're working, I'm assuming, in a school, right? So tell us like the working environment in the schools you work in terms of, do you experience any sort of prejudice, racism, in the school system? Are you respected? Is there a lot of gossiping there? A lot of women trying to date you there, in the school, or is it very strict there in the work environment, brother, specifically the work environment, brother?
Yeah, you did say in the work environment. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. That's my fault. But the work environment is actually very generally it's pretty professional, and if you're going to come across disrespect, it's usually going to be, like I said, from one of the white Westerners that's openly biased or feels comfortable showing it. Usually you don't come across that. As a black man, I work here any day before I go back stateside. I've actually argued with my brother about the fact that I'm not going to consider going back to live in the States. Not doing it, not to work, not to live. So it's much better here. It's the general environment, work and non-work, are safer. It's a very safe country, and the Gulf nations in general are very safe. So when you go to work, the things that tend to change from one place to another, and I'm working in universities. I haven't worked at a grade school since I've been here. That's the good thing. So I'm not responsible for trying to teach a bunch of kids. Usually my youngest students are 17 if they graduated high school early. And I've had students that were minors before, like in an institute. It didn't last long. Those positions that were short-lived. And then I'd be transferred to a university. But so it is a good thing you're at a university, because the high schools here can get rough. But when you're working here, for the most part, if you're explaining English really well, and a student that is paying attention can focus with you and they can improve, then honestly, you're really likely to be left alone. And if they give you a book and they say, teach from the book, then you do it, and then you just add whatever else you know. And if you're doing that, then you're really likely to be left alone. They'll observe you because they have to, but as long as you're trying to do your job, you're sincere at it. Yeah, they really they'll show you a lot of respect and be good to you and let you do your job.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. So, brother, you mentioned how the most disrespectful people there are the South Africans and other groups of white people, brother, in the workplace. But have you personally, brother, had any words said towards you, brother, in terms of because you're a Black American man, any sort of racist terms said towards you, brother, in the workplace? And brother, did you report it, or has it ever happened to you, brother, before?
To tell the truth, in the workplace, They don't do that with me, and the reason is because um, as soon as I landed, I started trying to pick up Arabic, and I made friends with some of the locals, and so they quickly caught on to the fact that Black Americans are not anti-Arab the way that some of the white Westerners are. Um, they don't fully understand American racism, and at that time they really didn't, because that was 2014. 2016 was a major milestone in terms of the Arab understanding, but let's say 2014 to 2016, they didn't fully understand it, but they knew it existed. And they learned from me that Black Americans are going to be different towards them than some of the white Westerners. Even some of the white Western Muslims who aren't racist just didn't jive with them quite as well. Because there's certain similarities between the way that we Black folks are and the way that Gulf Arabs are, especially in terms of child rearing and hierarchy. So that was actually one of the things that put a stop to it. I got in good with him, so I was meeting cops, and so for the most part, they straight told me, listen, this guy over here was walking around half naked. His shorts were too short based on the law here, and we'll give him a warning. Can you translate that? I said, yeah, I'll translate your warning. And so the in my case, I was kind of spared because the white South Africans, one, they knew that I wasn't going to tolerate nothing from them. And they knew I did not mind running to the cops and saying, this guy's not obeying the rules or obeying the laws. So what they did was they actually generally avoided me. If we didn't have to work together, they avoided me. They did do this to some other folks. Usually they'd mess with the Black South Africans because the Black South Africans had this thing of, we'll take care of this ourselves, but we're not going to involve the locals because they didn't expect the locals to help them. Whereas I said, no, F this. And I knew how to get the locals to help out if needed. So that was what changed it. But I'm not going to sit up and say that if I'd been someone else, they would have done it the same way. Now, when I moved to a slightly bigger city, slightly bigger, then you had more South Africans of all backgrounds, Indian, Black, white, all backgrounds. But to be honest with you, some of them did say some things and they got away with it. But they wound up resigning. One wound up resigning later on because nobody would work with him. And the students began to report him. He got a hold of some students that understood everything he was saying. And he didn't know they understood, and they reported him. So he realized that he was never going to get a raise or anything like that. And he went ahead and resigned.
Awesome.
Usually they don't last long.
And brother, and we will break down more about racism later on, brother. But this is very good for brothers who need that context. Hold on, Mr. Blackman. Great stream so far, brother. You're speaking facts. Shout out to Mr. Just Blue for the support. Appreciate you, brother. Can we get more super chats flowing, more PayPal flowing, donations, please? That'd be greatly appreciated. And during the stream IP, I'm currently talking to an attractive Kazakhstan woman. Oh, and I'm super curious on when you or Theo are going to cover more about Kazakhstan. Much love to y'all, bros. Brother, I've done one stream in the past about Kazakhstan women, brother. So go and check that out, please. I did that 2 years ago on the channel. Go and check it out. Thank you, brother. So next question for you, Mr. Blackmind, right, is, brother, in terms of accommodation. So you mentioned how when you went to Saudi Arabia, brother, they put you in a compound, right? I'm guessing with other Westerns there. So, brother, what about... So, brother, how is that process like? You know, is that set in stone before you move to Saudi Arabia? They sort it out for you. And brother, and what happens after, brother, if you want to leave the compound, brother? How is whole accommodation seem like? Is it hotel you're staying in? Is it do you have to buy your own house, brother? Currently, break it down for us, bro.
Sure. The old model is still in existence in some places. The old model pretty much was, if you're a native English speaker from the US, UK, Australia, Canada, I'm trying to think, New Zealand as well, yeah, and South Africa. So if you were coming from one of them, then it was pretty much known that the landlords were going to raise the rent on you. Everybody knew. So companies generally had their own compounds where it could be like an apartment. It could be it could be like a hotel. So it would just depend on which company and where you were. Now, this is the first time I'm telling anybody where I used to live, the first place I lived, which is Arar. When I first got here, 2 days after landing and getting my luggage, I was told you're going to Arar. And when we got there, there was a hotel. They were still building the compound because the project was new. So it wasn't even a compound. It was really just a house, but they were still putting the finishing touches on this major, big family size house, which had different, it still had like different apartments. And so about 2 weeks after being in Arar, they moved us into that place. And so for the native speakers, South Africans, the nationalities I mentioned, we were put in there, and if you were married, you got a slightly bigger place. If you were single, then they would put two ladies to a room, not a bedroom, but two ladies to an apartment, two men to an apartment. So they would do it that way, and then they would take us to work in the morning in a van, and then take us back in the afternoon. And so we didn't worry about transportation or housing, just food and doing our jobs. But I'm not going to lie, it wasn't that good of a place to live. It was clean, but it wasn't really that good of a place to live, mostly because of the climate and the gym. So gym was a problem. But then there have been other places where the compounds are really nice. They're sprawling. They're houses. There's a pool there. So it's really like a community, and sometimes they might even have a restaurant that's on the compound, so you don't even have to leave to buy your food. So non-drivers or non-car owners can pretty much get everything done. And where I live now, I can't say where it is now or who I work for, but it is nice. It's 2 high-rise buildings, apartments. It's got a walk-around track and a pretty good gym. It's not big, but it's modern, and it's well done. So yeah, it's a good arrangement now. And so I've seen all types, and they do have all types from shabby to nice.
So, brother, where you live now, your employer did sort that out for you.
I'm sorry.
So brother, where you live right now, did your employer put you in that place where you live right now, brother, or did you find out yourself?
No, where I live now, the employer put us here. It's owned by the employer. It's up the street from the campus where we work. And as a matter of fact, they used to give you a choice. They could give you a housing allowance, and then you found your own place, or they kept the housing allowance, you stayed here. But now they pretty much don't give you a choice. If you're employed with the university and you're not a citizen of one of the Gulf states, then you stay here. But it is nice. The only thing, if I were to tell them to fix something, the only thing I would tell them to fix would be to put a pool on the grounds, put a nice size swimming pool on the grounds, and everything else is fine. It's comfortable, it's clean. It's actually, even if you turn the AC off, it's still well ventilated. That's the other thing. And heat. You got to buy a space heater. So I really don't have any complaints. Now, I have been on projects where, and this happened when I was in Riyadh. I lived there for about 9 months before I came here. Now, there, same employee that I was always with before, there, I had to find my own, and it was expensive. It was Riyadh. I had no help. There was no good deal until actually my wife negotiated in Arabic with somebody, and she didn't tell them that I was American. She told them, I think she said that I was from the New World, like maybe she said Belize or something, but she didn't tell them I was American. That's where they didn't go up on the rent, because there's just no way. If they know that you're from one of those nations, even if you're not rich, there is almost no way, short of knowing you personally, that they're going to tell you the right price. So, but there was 1 month where I had to pay 5,000 Riyal, which was it was darn near U.S. prices for rent, and you probably heard about those nightmare prices that they have now.
Incredible.
So it was one month like that, but so I got lucky because of my wife after that month was over. But no, usually if you're from one of those nations I mentioned and you get a job here, you don't have to worry about housing. And a lot of times they give you the option. So as you learn the local market or learn the language, or you make friends with locals that can negotiate a fair price, then you have the option to move off compound and pay your own rent, live where you want to.
Awesome, bro. Fantastic. So next question for you, bro. So you're in Saudi Arabia, right? Who runs
Yes,
that
sir.
country, bro? Is it Saudi Arabians or is it external forces? Is it actually the US that runs the country via proxy, or is it someone else, the Kuwaitis, Iranians? Who actually runs Saudi Arabia, brother?
Um, from everything that I can see, who actually runs it is, in fact, the king and his son, the crown prince. Um, if anybody else does run it, there are two things surrounding that. One, we wouldn't be shown who actually runs it. A local would probably know better than I would, but um, I would not really be allowed to see if somebody else runs it from the outside. And then two, if somebody did run it from the outside and I mentioned it, then I would vanish. I'd disappear. Um, I'd be lucky if I just got deported. So, but to my knowledge, everybody that, yeah, to my knowledge, it's run by the king and his crown prince son. Now, I'm sure that they do, in fact, have. I'm sure that they have these negotiations with other nations. They generally do at least listen to what another government is interested in. But to be honest with you, the current crown prince has he has a reputation for not really being swayed that easily. That's as much as I
Awesome.
know.
Awesome. So next question for you, brother, right, is now in terms of, so brother, you're a Western black man, you are a black American man. Brother, how are you treated there, brother? As a black American man, brother, in terms of respect, in terms of treatment, brother, do they respect you, brother? Or are you feeling a bit isolated there as a dark skinned black man who's black, with a afro hair or whatever? Tell us the treatment there, brother, as a black man in Saudi Arabia.
I've actually tested them because since I look racially ambiguous, um, I picked up on, or I assumed that I might be treated differently based on that. But what I did was I run some tests on locals at times, and actually, what I found was that on one hand, uh, I was shown even more respect than white Westerners were. To be honest with you, even a white Muslim guy that came into the country a day before I did, and the whole time that he was alive, he and I worked together. We were always on the same assignment from the time that from the day I landed until the day he passed away in a car accident. But in all honesty, the locals really treated me better than him because one, um, I was I was doing more to try to learn to speak Arabic with the locals, but not slang. I would try to speak like a teacher, like I had some kind of like I had some sense and some education. But then what I did was I would hang around, my personal life away from the locals. I hung around black folks. So I was hanging around African Americans, Somalis, Black Britishers. Uh, so what I found was that in fact they give you respect. What they do is this: if you're Black American, the young ones will show you respect and love, whether you're Muslim or not. The ones that are middle aged and older will show you respect if you're not Muslim, but they show you love if you're Muslim. That's the best way I could describe it, and that's for Black folks in general. Period. Um, and I recently began to meet, I wouldn't say recently, this is early 2022, this is about 2 years ago. I met a lot of Nigerians that were living where I used to live. Um, and a lot of them. So, of course, I'm meeting my distant relatives. So I was hanging out with them. But our neighbors that were Saudis treated all of us across the board with respect. They were inviting us to eat dinner at their homes uniformly, all across the board. And so I had to say that the disrespect that you hear about them showing, there are two things about it that two misconceptions people don't realize. Number one, a lot of the disrespect that you hear about them showing is based on somebody being a maid, because the maids really don't have power. Drivers too. Family drivers and maids are the ones that don't have much power. So they do get shown disrespect. Number two, they are usually The maids come from different places, so it's not just African maids. If they're mean to the maids, they're mean to the maid if she's from the Philippines, Indonesia, or an African country. And if they're nice to the maids, then they're nice no matter where she's from. And then the third thing is this, and this is what caught me off guard. It's actually a lot of times in Lebanon that a lot of these disrespectful and violent incidences occur. Kuwait sometimes too, because they're known to be snobs. Even other Gulf Arabs say that they're snobs. So in Kuwait and Lebanon, that's where you really hear the stories come out about how they just be doing them wrong, just bad. In reality, I found out that Saudi families are afraid to actually abuse their maids because they don't want that negative press. They don't want that. They don't want those problems. If they embarrass their country, then they run the risk of going behind the sun. And that's a local expression that means vanishing, disappearing.
Okay, so but interesting that. So, are there black Saudi Arabians, bro?
There are, and I hang out with them nowadays when I meet new Saudis citizens. I pretty much hang out with the black Saudi citizens. If I hang out with citizens now, it's usually a black Saudi citizen. They are there. Where I'll tell you where you find them the most. You find them the most in the Hijaz region, which means the west. That's Medina and Mecca, and the cities to the west of them, like Jeddah, Yanbu, those areas. And then you find them in Riyadh, and also Jazan. Got a lot of black Saudis in those areas. So if ever I'm in those places and the citizen wants to hang out, I'll be nice, but to tell the truth, I will seek them out to hang out with them actually, because they are there. And they're black, and they are a separate community. Actually, that's the thing. It's not like there's hatred between black folks and non-blacks, but they are different communities. Even when they have the same last names, they can get along well with each other, could even be related to each other. But most of the time, the cultures are actually a little bit different. Their social circles, I should say, are different. And so when I was in Riyadh for about 9 months, a local rapper actually, shout out to B Deep, and one of his distant cousins, Mr. Hausawi. They're both Hausawi, but shouts out to those brothers. Salam alaikum if y'all hear this. They introduced me to their kinfolk. So I got to hang out with black Saudis instead of always being invited by non-black Saudis to their homes all the time. I was hanging out with them, and it was actually more comfortable, to be honest. So yeah, they are there. They've got their own banking system. I just found this out a few weeks ago, and I'm supposed to be introduced to to like this council of elders, if you will, that's in my area where I now live. I'm supposed to be introduced to them probably within the next month, I'm guessing. And I can participate in that banking system. So I can give out loans to help somebody. And if I get into a bind, I could borrow a little bit. So yeah, they are a different community. And even though you have differences, like you got the ones that still have African last names, but they're Saudi citizens because of how long they've been here. Then you got the ones with African last names and they never got citizenship, so they don't have any nationality. And then you got the ones that they're citizens, but they've got the same last names as non-black Saudis. So they're like you could say three different experiences, but their community is actually a black community. And in like the banking system, it's open to whoever is black, period. It's not based on nationality. It's not based on language or your last name. If you're black and you know someone already in it, you're allowed to participate in it.
Wow, incredible, brother. Shout out to Volcanus for the support. SLIP, Black Man in chat. Thank you, Volcanus. Appreciate you, bro. So, Mr. Black Mind, so you're telling me, brother, right? In Saudi Arabia right now, there's black American men, there's black British men, black Canadian men, Nigerian men, black South African men. But you tell me that there's a whole bunch of black people from different nationalities, brother, in South Saudi Arabia right now, brother, and they're all obviously networking, helping each other out. There's sort of like a black community there of different nationalities of countries, brother, in Saudi Arabia. What?
Yeah. Now the communities sometimes where they live might be a little bit different to where they hang out, but yeah, once and language does play a big role. So like the Nigerians and the Sudanese here actually get along pretty well. And this is generally speaking the Muslims I'm talking about. Uh, so, but the Nigerians and the Sudanese, for instance, they get along well, but there's a language difference because in Sudan, the first language is Arabic. In Nigeria, the main common language is English. And then you've got Hausa in the north, Fula, you've got, but the languages in the middle, like Ibara, Igala, Yoruba in the
Mm.
middle and the south, Igbo in the south. So the language might be a little bit different. But once you have a language barrier that's removed, like the Sudanese speaks English, which is common, or let's say a Sudanese and a Nigerian both speak Hausa, that happens a lot because you have Hausa in Sudan. People don't know that, but Hausa and Fulani people live in Sudan too. And Hausa it's a fairly common language in Sudan. So you come across a Sudanese that speaks Hausa and a Nigerian that speaks Hausa, then they will actually yeah, they can start hanging out with each other, getting together. So yeah, it is like that. And I'll tell you this, just a few days ago when I was in my old city visiting my wife, Ramadan ended, as y'all know. So when I went for the holiday prayer, the Eid prayer in the morning, I saw some Nigerians that I met over 2 years ago, the ones I mentioned to you. I saw some of them by chance. I went up, I said, hey, how's everything going? Y'all good? Good to see y'all again. We dapped each other up, gave each other bear hugs, all that good stuff. I met the father of one of the young guys I was talking to, and uh, he and I were chopping it up with his sons. And then these Sudanese fellas walk by. You can tell by the robes that they wear that they're Sudanese, and in the way they tie their turban, clearly Sudanese. And they were just openly looking. Now, in the States, we would have been like, man, what the walk you looking at? With them, it was like it was not that at all. There's actually a rule here that if you're black and you see another black person, regardless of nationality or even language, you're supposed to speak to each other.
Damn.
So he was waiting. The reason they were staring was not any hostility. They were waiting for us to see them so that we could give each other the head nod and the greeting. And we did. And a black Saudi happened to walk by while we were talking. And he heard us talking in English. And he said in English, where y'all from? And I mean, he was so happy to meet us, he forgot to say Salam Alaikum, Eid Mubarak, where y'all from? Proper protocol. So I said, well, I raised my hand. I said, well, I'm from the Gulf Coast of the U.S. My brother's here from Nigeria, and then these gentlemen here from Sudan. And he was like, oh, welcome. Are y'all Hausa? And the Nigerian said, yeah, we are. Hausa and Fulani, but they speak Hausa. So we were chopping it up a little bit. Now, this black Saudi man, he had to go. He couldn't stay too long. But this was the rule. You see someone black, you're supposed to get a head nod. And if you are within voice or earshot of each other, you're supposed to say Salam Alaikum. Now, if you're a black man and you see a lady, you don't have to say anything because of how the rules are with gender, but there's that understanding. But yeah, two black women see each other, they're supposed to give each other the head nod. My wife has had to do this when we were shopping. And there was a lady that was right in front of my wife. Actually, they looked very similar, to be honest with you. And my wife started helping her bag her groceries. She didn't have to ask or give her name or anything. She just said, oh, salam alaikum. I'll get these groceries over here, save you some time. And they got to chopping it up. And the white Saudis, if you call them white, if you want to, like the cashier and other employees, they had nothing to say about it because some of them know the rules. We're supposed to say hello to each other. And yeah, that's actually, there is a cohesion and a solidarity here. And for years, I didn't know about this because I'm not recognizable visually. But once I got married, and then when my son came to visit me here for 3 weeks a while back, then it became more visible to me. But I actually learned about this when I was in Riyadh because it was B Deep that told me about that. B Deep said, yeah, when we see each other, we're supposed to speak.
So, brother, now tell me more about the Black British people there in Saudi, brother. Is there a sizable community over there, brother? And how are they treating each other there? How are they treating you, the Black British men, and how they treat their overall, brother, as Black British men? Because, brother, we're quite small in the world. Obviously, I'm Black British myself, brother. So how are they moving out there in Saudi Arabia, brother?
I've actually met Black Brits usually in medium-sized cities and bigger cities, or I'll put it like this: I meet them in medium-sized cities, but I will hear about them in bigger cities, and a lot of them did wind up moving to bigger cities. The Black Brits are various nationalities, so I mean, their passports are British, of course, but their origins, their grandparents and parents come from various nationalities: Zimbabwean, Jamaican, Somali. They're actually, those three are actually pretty common in terms of the origins of their blackness. So most of them are Muslim as well. So there's already a religious commonality, and so they generally do hang out with each other. And then you have some Sudanese that are British or Sudanese origins, and they're either American or British in their nationality based on where they were born. And so we will, when we know each other, we hang out together, and we do roll as units. There was a time where a bunch of teachers were not being paid a particular fee. Our salaries were paid, but there was a time when a bunch of us were not being paid a particular fee for some extra work we did. And when I say the teachers, I'm talking about regardless of nationality or race. We had done some weekend work that was not normal. That was for an extra fee. None of them, nobody got paid. Male, female, white, black, purple, rainbow, polka dot, no one got paid on time. So it was a Sudanese American, a Sudanese Britisher, Somali British brother, and I, and then another Sudanese American. Matter of fact, that's right, because both of them were from Chicago. We went to one of these offices and we said, look, we did all this work. All us teachers did the work and we didn't get paid. I was the palest guy in this group. And so to be honest with you, some people started to get a little nervous. Some of the administrators in this other building got a little nervous. And they started trying to pass the buck. But one of the Sudanese guys said, look, they already sent us here. You're sending us there. Who signs these checks? Hurry up and pay everybody. And to be honest with you, a few weeks later, people started getting paid with the electronic deposits. They didn't even have to go and collect the checks. So there was still some of this notion of like they don't believe that we're just savage and we'll fight for no reason. But even here, there's a notion and this idea that if you're not a black male, you don't want to get into a fist fight with a black male. Even here.
So obviously, brother, Saudi people majority are Arabs, right? Brown skin Arabs, light pale skin Arabs, not white, but they still have Arabic Berber genes, right? So, but you're telling me that the majority of Saudi people, right, who are not black, they actually respect black foreign people and black people born in their country who are obviously black Saudi Arabians, bro. Wow.
Yeah, the notion is that they don't. And truth be told, you really do see both. You see a respect, and then you will also see disrespect sometimes. Most of the time, the disrespect is not to the level that you would see in the UK or the USA. Definitely not the US, because even the racists here doesn't think that type of thing is okay. Even the ones that are racist here think that America's barbaric. Because if they are racist here, what they want is to just not mix their blood with us black folks, but and maybe just keep us at a distance, or maybe try to convince us to act more like them, wear the same hairstyles as if that's possible. Stupid stuff like that. But it usually doesn't get to violence. Racial violence, they don't even associate with this part of the world. They associate racial violence with America. So they don't want to get to that point. The younger ones are pretty much anti-racist. A lot of the younger Saudis, especially if they've grown up in a big city and they're exposed to both Arabic and English, they generally are against that stuff. And they're the ones who confess. And they'll say, well, my aunts, grandparents, or even their parents, they'll say, their thing is, why would you marry someone that's black and ruin the blood? But they don't hate y'all. And so it's like their disrespect is oftentimes ignorant and subconscious. I don't tolerate it because they're Muslim. And if you're Muslim, you're supposed to never be for the oppressor. But it's like a stupid kind of bias that you can easily correct one guy, one of them was students last semester, not this semester, but last fall semester, raised his hand when some of his classmates were talking about race. He raised his hand. He said to me, well, he said, Instructor Black, we're not racist in this country. It's just that we view Black as slave. And I said, okay. I straight told him, okay, now think about what you just said. Okay, we're not racist amongst my race. It's just that we view Arab as terrorists. Now, how stupid does that sound when I say that? And he said, it's pretty dumb. And yeah, he said it sounds mutakhallif, that means retarded. So I said, okay, well, that's what the hell that's how what you just said sounds. You don't hate us, but you just think we're inferior. Well, if you think that, but you say you Muslim, that actually makes you inferior for being biased. And he took the correction. He had to admit, damn, that's actually correct. So they're pretty corrigible, I would say. Bedouins are they're noticeably less educated on average, and that gap is closing. But you can correct them. I was shocked. I didn't expect that to be the case, but you can correct them. And I've had some come to me and apologize and say, I used to think this, that, and the other about race in the United States. I'm sorry I got it wrong, especially after 2016. After that summer 2016, the fall of 2016, quite a few citizens came to me and apologized for not believing what I told them.
Amazing, brother. Brother, great stream so far. You're speaking facts. Shout out to Mr. Raphael for the support. Great stream so far. Salutes you, brother. Thank you for the support. Much appreciated. If you are enjoying this stream, I'm going to ask you to hit the like button. Please hit the like button. And of course, please hit the super chat and the PayPal donation if you can support. That'd be greatly appreciated. So next question for you, brother, right, is more about Saudi people. So overall, brother, right, how are Saudi Arabian people like, both the men and the women? Are they kind people? Are they respectful people? Are they extroverts or are they reserved? Are they introverts? You know, are they very closed off? How are Saudi people like, brother, in general?
Actually, I say they're pretty extroverted. Sometimes they're shy because of the language barrier, but once that's surpassed, either you speak Arabic or they realize their English is understandable. And then sometimes they're just already really good at it. They're actually pretty extroverted, to be honest with you. Now, the thing is that, like, you won't be spending the night at people's homes because their families are there, and they don't generally bring people of the opposite gender around their relatives. Like you know, it'll be men that would invite you to eat dinner with them, stuff like that. But they wouldn't say spend the night because their sisters and moms are in the house. So that's pretty much where the limit goes. But no, they're actually very extroverted. They're very hospitable, regardless of race. The Saudi citizens and Gulf Arabs in general, all races, with their words and with their deeds, are quite hospitable. Even when they're not really educated and they don't understand you, their intention is always to be an excellent host. They take pride in that. They don't want to be a bad host, so they'll pull out all kinds of stops. They really want to feed you and spoil you while you're their guest. They take that pretty seriously. So they're actually a very, very friendly group of people. I mean, even on the flight today, when I was coming from my old city, my wife's city still, to where I now live, the guy next to me, he bought this water on the flight because it's for sale. And then he handed me one of the bottles. I said, "Oh, thank you, bro. I didn't order one though." And he straight said, "No. He gave this. He said, this is your bottle. Actually, I'm just passing it to you." He said it in fluent English. And I said to him, "Thank you, man. I appreciate that." But he actually bought the bottle. And he was just doing it to be hospitable because he knew that I was a guest in the country. Even though I live here, he probably thought I just got here, and he started a conversation in English. So they're actually quite, they're quite accommodating as long as they see respect from you. Now, if somebody's disrespectful, like the way that sometimes, like I mentioned, the white South Africans are, they'll wait and watch for a while to make sure that they're understanding it correctly, that this guy's really just disrespectful. Then they'll go ham on him. So they do fight back. They have a wait and see attitude, make sure, and then they'll fight back. But if they don't pick up on disrespect, they're really, really, really nice and really hospitable. Always invite you out to dinner. Sometimes you go to one of these little restaurants, nothing fancy, or maybe even one of them, and you're eating and you get ready to pay, and the waiter come in and say, somebody already got your bill. And you're looking like, well, who was it? he left already. They don't even like let you thank him, you know. And the understanding is the next time you can do that for somebody that's new in town, you do it for them. And
Wow.
that was actually that's one of the ways that I met the Nigerians that I was working with in that town. I had eaten before, and people would just see this Western guy. And so sometimes I'd go to pay, and they'd say, "Well, they already paid. The only thing is they paid before you got the dessert, so you only owe for the dessert." I'm like, "Well, who are they? Did they already leave?" "Yeah, they left." Okay, so then when I saw these guys from Nigeria that were eating in the restaurant before I met them, the custom in that town was, someone's new in town, go ahead and cover their bill for them, right? And so I did this, and so I met some of them later. I met one of their friends later that was not eating with them that day. So when he introduced me to his friends, that's when I realized, oh, these are the same guys that were eating. And they even asked me, "Are you the one that paid for the meal? Are you the one that paid for our lunch that day?" And I shook my head. No, I was like, "No, that was an Egyptian cat, bro. He was in line ahead of me. It was him that did it." Um, so
Wow.
yeah, it's the hospitality is nice. I mean, they really are friendly people across the board. Um, but it's like if I tell you that they racist and I don't explain it, I'll be lying. And then if I tell you that they're not racist and I don't explain it, I will be lying. But it's like they're really nice,
How is it like
but their
working,
biases are generally non-violent.
brother? So, brother, how is it like
I'm
working with
sorry, your voice.
Saudis? Sorry, am I back, brother?
Okay, it broke up and went underwater.
Can you hear me now? All right, hold on,
Now
hold
you're
on.
clear. Alhamdulillah.
I'm
You're
good
clear
now.
now.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
awesome, bro. So, brother, how's it like working with Saudis in the workplace, bro?
To be honest with you, like I said, they're real friendly. They are real nice. That's the good thing. Uh,
So,
right
sorry, brother.
now, it's a
So, brother, they won't trouble you in the workplace, obviously, brother.
no,
You're
no,
foreigner
they
there.
don't.
Majority, they won't. Okay, go on, bro.
They yeah, if you're working with them, they don't cause trouble for you for the most part. The issue with working with Saudis now is just that you've got young Saudis that are really trying to be serious workers. Uh, and they take their job seriously. So they're just inexperienced, but they really do mean to do their job. So working with them is different from working with a Saudi that's like in their 30s or older. I'm just gonna be honest, man. Saudis in their 30s and older, they don't work. I mean, they got jobs, but they don't generally work hard. That's the one thing about Saudis. The hospitality is great. But when it comes to an actual work ethic, they're not known for that. So the younger ones in their 20s they're different because they didn't grow up being quite as spoiled. But no, bro, you 30s and above, man, they don't necessarily know what they're doing. They gotta rely on somebody else. They want to help you for the most part, but they're not really gonna work hard and they gotta go to the guy from the Philippines. It's getting better though. I will say it's getting better. About 3 years ago, they didn't know anything they were doing. I mean, they were working at McDonald's and you could walk up and order from them in Arabic and they didn't understand you. It was bad, but they're getting better now. They don't try to get you in trouble at your job. They don't do stuff like that. But I did have one case where a friend of mine, he's in the same city as me now, and he lived in the city I lived in before, the one I just visited with my wife. Uh, he's actually Afghan American from the west coast of the U.S. He was the one that told me that racism actually got started in Afghanistan. He said that he even knows the tribe that started it. That they were the first racist on the planet. Nobody was racist before them. But that's another story I'll talk about. He he was in a situation where, because he's a real honest guy, he's serious about this religion. So because he's real honest down to the detail, he was appointed at the last university to really monitor not only the students during the exams, but even to monitor the other professors. Because you had lazy professors, they just let students cheat, right? So he was in charge of monitoring them, all of them, to ensure academic honesty. There was a Bedouin Saudi guy who wanted that job for himself because he was lazy and he was corrupt. He wasn't mean, but he was just lazy as hell. He didn't want to do any work. And he knew that if you had this Afghan American guy doing his job, he was going to have to do his job. So he started complaining. He did make trouble. He actually threatened to sue and to falsely criminally accuse my friend. And the company knew what was going on, so they let my friend go and get another job with another company and just kind of vanish, because they knew that he was being done wrong, but they weren't going to be able to convince a judge to find in favor of him if you got a citizen sitting up there saying X, Y, and Z. And that's one thing about the locals. If you get into legal trouble, anything from a car wreck to a more serious conflict, once you get in legal trouble, the system is usually going to find in favor of the citizen. And when you get into the smaller cities away from the towns, it gets even worse, because in the bigger cities, the judges are, the world's catching up. So the judges are under more scrutiny. But you start getting into these smaller villages, a teenager could steal his dad's car, joyride, run a red light, hit you. And the insurance guy that shows up is going to write the report like you caused the accident. So that is an issue. And where my friend was working, the citizen was going to try to exploit that. And the company knew what was going on, so they let my friend off the hook easy. So that was a one-off situation. But for the most part, when you're in if you're in a real city, no, they don't cause trouble for you at the job. You do your job, they do theirs. If you ask them for help, they will try to help. And if they don't know what they're doing, they'll go to one of the foreigners that does know. But they'll try to at least get you in touch with someone that knows if they don't. It's just they may not know what they're doing. Like I've met some Saudi English teachers whose English was ucked fuck. They shouldn't have been teachers. But they seem to mean well. They're just too lazy to correct their English.
Awesome, bro. So, brother, is it true in saying this, right? The average Saudi person is rich. Brother, Saudi Arabia is an oil state, right? They have the most oil reserves in the entire world, right? And the economy is based on oil, right? They make a lot of money through oil. But is the average Saudi person filthy rich?
No, actually, no. There are Saudis that are poor. Now they could be a little bit proud for no reason, but no, I would still say that amongst the citizens, most are somewhere in the middle. But no, the average Saudi citizen is not even rich, let alone filthy rich. It's not like that. The thing is, I don't know if the poor outweigh the rich or if the rich outweigh the poor. I do know that either one is really rare. Most are somewhere in the middle. But to be honest, the economy is hard on everybody now. They're not really, I would say this, it's not hopeless for them, because you don't find homeless people here for the most part. You just foreigner or citizen, you don't find people just living out on the street. That you don't come across, because people are allowed to live with their families, and foreigners aren't really allowed to just wander around with no employment anyway. So homelessness is not really an issue. But no, the wealth, no. As a matter of fact, some families are becoming poor now, because as the economy gets harder, you got more men that are turning to drugs to try to cope, because their wives don't care. Like the wives here, when the economy gets hard, the wife still wants to shop, and she still doesn't want to cook, and she still wants that maid, and she wants that driver, she still wants that nanny. They don't tolerate taking a dip in living expenses that well. They'll stay with the husband in most cases, but they're going to give him purity hell. So a lot of husbands, they turn into drugs, and it makes the situation worse. And you do have some situations, even in these Bedouin towns, where women will take one of these ride shares, and then they'll try to lift the cash or steal the cash from the driver, and then use that to pay him, and then walk off when the ride's over. You still have that situation going on. You have, and you do have women that resort to extortion to make their money. So it's not violent. It's not that they hate the guys, but they'll just go ahead and try to do it to get that money. So they'll flirt with a guy, and then when he flirts back, she'll say, "Look, I'm going to turn you in for harassment if you don't pay me this amount of money." Stuff like that. Or they'll take a ride share, and then they'll say, "Look, if this ride's not free, I'm turning you in for harassment." And that's because of the economy. They don't really hate the driver, but they're just like, "I'm going to get this money too, and I'm not going to be poor. I'm not going to take any dip in living standards, none." So wow. You do have some poverty here, and you got people willing to do stupid stuff to get ahead. But the rich are not, the rich are not that common. And there is one thing I can say, and then I'm gonna shut up for the next question because I know I talked a lot. I'm just trying to give a clear picture for your audience in mind. One of the things about rich people here is this. Um, Rich people don't necessarily show off their wealth. That's one thing. You can't look at them and tell that they're rich because the dress is generally the same. The car might give it away or it might not. The house may or may not, because there are quite a few rich people that don't live in a big house and they don't drive a big car because they don't actually want that kind of attention. That's pretty common. So you don't really even know how many people are rich. Even the government doesn't know how many are rich.
Wow, incredible, brother. So, brother, obviously, but after hearing what some Saudi women do, brother, has that ever affected foreigners there, or is that only them doing those kind of shady things to other Saudi men? They'll never dare chat with a foreigner.
Well, in terms of them flirting, if a woman's a flirt, she's a flirt. So, if she's a flirt, she'll flirt with a guy that can understand her. Uh, so yeah, it's like that. If she can flirt well enough in English, then she'll do that. As a matter of fact, some of them will flirt with foreigners more than they will flirt with local men. That happens too. But generally speaking, flirts tend to just be flirts. So to give an example, I've had it on occasion where some lady, they don't outright flirt, but they'll try certain things to test boundaries and see how far they could get. And I obey the law. Where I go, I obey the law, and I also obey God. I'm not saying I'm very good at it, but I do take that seriously. So I can't afford no second wife. Couldn't treat her fairly if I had one. So I don't entertain it. But I'm not going to be rude to them. But like I mentioned, how you have sometimes you got Saudi English teachers. One of them was a lady at my last position. We worked different shifts, but sometimes if I was late leaving my shift and she showed up for hers on time, if she showed up on time, because there's that. She was a nice lady, but sometimes she would make conversation, and then she would start finding ways to throw in more unnecessary compliments and like, "Oh, mashallah, you're such a fast typer." Not really, no. I've done it for a while, but I'm not really that fast and accurate at the same time. And so, and she tried to shake my hand one time. Well, I know in the big cities people are lax about that, but like I said, I'm a foreigner, I'm a guest. If I make this woman mad, she could make it difficult if I don't have any witnesses. So what I did was I was holding this golf club in my hand. So when she stuck her hand out, I put the handle of the golf club in her hand and I shook it that way, which is still being nice, but I'm not touching her hand. And I said, it was good to see y'all both. I was speaking to her and to my boss, a man from Sudan. I said, it was good to see you both. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Y'all be good. So I was still polite. But so she was doing this with me. But then I was in Mr. House Always Call with him one day, and this lady rolled up, she rolled her window down and asked him something. So he rolled the window down to listen to a question. And she said, "Are my lips beautiful?" She got this operation done. And so he said, "Look, everything's beautiful, but we obey the law, ma'am. we do things the right way here." And he told her salam alaikum, and he rolled his window back up. So she was trying to flirt with him, or at least trying to get attention from him. And she was asking him because, we got lips, and they pay the women will pay money to get the same lips we got. So if they flirt, they generally flirt based on who can understand them the best. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I know this for a fact. They flirt with black men more.
Whoa,
that I have seen. Yes.
what? Oh my goodness. But obviously, we'll get to the woman part very soon. Let me make a note of that actually. Flirt with black men more. Flirt with black men. We'll get to that, brother, very soon. So, next question for you, brother. Brother, if you have any questions, brother, your questions must be answered in the super chat. So, if you have any questions, send any questions in the super chat or PayPal donation. Mr. Blackman, please, brother, avoid answering any questions, brother, unless they send it through a donation, please. Okay, bro? So,
fair enough.
Next question for you, Black Mind, okay, is now, brother, in terms of, so, brother, how does one meet people and make friends in Saudi Arabia? Brother, so we are in a very Islamic country. I think that's a fact, right? But if you disagree there, let me know, brother. But I think Saudi Arabia is a very strong religious Islamic country. And let me know if you agree or disagree, brother. Um, so, brother, how do we make friends there as a passport bro in what's it called in Saudi Arabia, whether you're Islam, Christian, whatever, and you're living in Saudi Arabia, you're working there. But how do we make friends, brother? And how do we meet new people in Saudi Arabia?
Well, when you talk about meeting new people, I could say this as an SYSBM, which itself was co-started by a Muslim. This mad bus driver, and then a Muslim brother was helping him write the tenets. A man named Dwight Hayes. Uh, I haven't been able to find Dwight in several months actually, but if you hear this, Dwight, salam alaikum, Eid Mubarak, let me know you're okay, man. We've been trying to find you, but they co-wrote this. So as a SYSBM man, I could say that it's easier in that regard because most of us tend to be about marriage anyway. So if you're looking for, I mean, really, literally just friends, oh, that's easy. You just move about your day like normal. You're going to order coffee, and before you know it, you've made a friend because somebody in line behind you, they'll say, "Hey, where are you from?" And they'll invite you to sit with Tim for coffee. They could be ready to meet their friends, and their friends come in, walk in on both of y'all, and they introduce you to their friends. So that part's pretty easy. And for Black Western men, even Black men that are not from the West, it's going to be easy because you get to meet Black Saudis. They will open. They're more open to you. They wouldn't do that in my case unless they know. And if they hear me talk, yeah, they might know. It depends on how good their English is. If they see me, like when they saw me with my son, it was more open. If you're introduced by someone that knows, if I'm introduced by someone that knows I'm Black to other Black folk, then yeah, sure. But like just by default, in actuality, a lot of the Black Saudis they would respond however I speak to them. They wouldn't necessarily try to make friends per se, nor enemies. But in your case, if you're recognizable, then yeah, they'll make friends with you. So that part's pretty easy. Now, if you're talking about, with women, don't um don't seek them out unless it is for marriage. You'll work with some women anyway, and you just be nice to them. You work with them. Some of them will take a liking to you, and you'll never know about it. But if you're looking for marriage, then go ahead. You could seek one out. Look for her to be from the same faith as you too. People here get along even with the religious differences. But when it comes to marriage, marry someone that believes in something similar to what you believe in. So, if a guy's a Hindu, he knows. Don't look for the Christian. Don't look for the Muslim woman. Look for the Hindu woman if he's looking to get married. That's. But yeah, making friends itself is easy. It's actually hard to not do it. You have to be standoffish and quiet in order to not make friends, or just not go out in public much to not make friends. That's not. That's something you have to think about how you're going to do. I actually, if I'm fatigued from dinner invitations and stuff like that, I ain't gonna lie. Then I'll order Hunger Station, which is like a local version of DoorDash. I'll do that if I'm just fatigued from all these invitations. To be honest, because especially if you go out during a holiday or a weekend, you will be invited to eat with somebody within an hour, within that time frame, if you get into a long enough conversation. So that's real. It's hard to
What
not make
about
friends, really.
what about in terms of like functions? So what do you like? Is there like a weekly, like let's say anime, I don't know, anime anime meetups or football meetups, soccer meetups, or weekly, let's say maybe go to a park to meet people, wine tasting, a museum. What about in terms of like places and spots, and in terms of like maybe in Riyadh or in Arar? Break it down for us, bro.
All right. So, well, there definitely won't be wine tasting here. It's still illegal in this country. The only places they might be able to do it will be foreign embassies, because they're extraterritorial, of course. But for the most part, and even then, you and I wouldn't hear about those things per se. But there will be events. I'll put it like this: in Saudi, a lot of times the events where people really do get together are football games, and I mean what you call football, what Americans call soccer. There are those. There somebody's getting married every weekend. As expensive as it is, and as difficult as it is, every weekend someone's getting married. So you're going to get invitations to that too. And that's where a lot of networking goes on, to be honest. Let's see what else. There are oftentimes, if you work here, your coworkers will have certain things going on at different weekends as well. Like I just got back in the compound so that I could, when I got back from this trip, I got back to the compound and I saw several of my colleagues. They were all gathered around. I don't know what they were doing, but they had some kind of event going on. And so you do find them. They generally tend to be, though, the two most common, I would say, are weddings and football games. Women have their parties. Now, I would say that you do have certain exhibitions and shows going on in Riyadh. They have something called Riyadh Season. They got a lot of entertainment going on in Riyadh right now. They got something called World Boulevard, where they have these different exhibitions from different countries. It's a very large area, and you'll walk through a makeshift streets, if you will, and you're in Spain, and then you walk further down, and then you're in Mexico, and then you continue on, and then you're in France, and you make a right turn to go to Italy or a left turn to go to the Greek exhibit. And everybody's walking around enjoying this, and they got restaurants from different parts of the world in these respective areas. You got something called the Middle Beast. I don't know what the show was about, but you got car races that are going on here. So there's actually a lot of entertainment. A while ago, my wife and I took a trip actually to Bahrain to see a comedy show that it was Trevor Noah and Kevin Hart, and it was in the amphitheater in Bahrain. So we went there for that comedy show. And everybody was cracking up. I mean, most of the audience understood everything. So it was so you have a lot that you can do in terms of entertainment right now in the Arabian Peninsula. I ain't gonna lie. There's plenty going on. There's more stuff than I even know about. It's just that it's not going to be in the smaller cities. That's all.
Amazing. Thank you, bro. Shout out to you, Intellect, for the support. Thanks for what you do, IP. Honestly, Mordor sounds like a better trip than Saudi Arabia. You joker. Appreciate you both for the support. All right, so next question for you, brother, is now transportation, Mr. Black Mind. So, brother, how does one move around in Riyadh and Arar? Is there a subway system there, train system, bus, or do we have to learn how to drive? Do we have to drive over there, or do we use Uber? Break it down for us, bro.
Sure. You have a ride share here. Uber's one. Careem is another. They were just bought out by Uber, but their app is still different. It's been pretty efficient. And then you got another one that costs less called Bolt. Now, sometimes all the Bolt drivers are busy, but those are the three major options. You have some other ones too that cost even less, but they're less organized too. But I tend to use Bolt myself. Now my wife and I own a car, but I told my wife to keep the car with her in the city where she lives, where I used to live. But it's good to own one. However, I would say this for transportation when you first come here, what you do is, one, avoid going to some village somewhere. They'll try to put you in these villages, but avoid going there because you won't necessarily have the ride shares there. People there, they gotta drive. They just have to drive. And if you're new there, you don't really want to do that, because if you have an accident, and the teenagers are crazy. When they drive like they are insane. They drift for fun. I'm not joking. And it used to be a lot worse. Every weekend, somebody was dying, even in small villages. Every weekend, someone died in a car accident, or a week even. But you still have that now because the teenagers are bored. So when you first get here, it's okay to ask people to take you somewhere if you're in a small village, But if you can get into a medium size or bigger city, go ahead, use the ride share for years until, I would say, do it for about 2 years to get yourself used to how they drive. And then if you have enough saved up, you want to buy a car, go ahead. Now in Riyadh, they did finish building the metro rail system recently. They got buses going around Riyadh, so they got public transportation there. Another city is Dammam and Khobar and Dhahran. They're like three cities next to each other. They got a public bus system. I saw that um, when my wife and I went to Bahrain. We went through Khobar, and we saw that there was a bus system there. Bahrain does have, I think they got a bus system. Um, and I say Bahrain because it's pretty much just one city and a few suburbs, but the city does have it. I don't know how good it is, but I did see buses there. Um, I forgot what they have in Qatar. I've never been, but someone told me. Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I'm not saying the UAE, but Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they do have buses, and Dubai also has a rail system. So in the bigger cities, you can get around pretty easily. You don't have to have a car for a while, and I wouldn't even recommend getting one early on.
Okay, thank you, brother. So, brother,
Yes,
so
sir.
how do we use cash out there in Saudi Arabia, right? Is it card mostly, or is it cash mostly? Is there any FX charges, brother? How does the whole cash use work, brother? Is it cashless, or do we have to use card there? Brother, do you use your American card, or do you use a Saudi Arabian card? But break down the money aspect, brother, for you and your wife.
Yeah, sure, I could do that. And this is actually good for people to wind up coming here to visit or to live. You got to live here with a residency permit to get a bank account in one of the local banks. So, I mean, I do live here legally, so that makes it pretty easy for me. I decided to get two bank accounts, one just for savings and the other one from which I save and spend. It's probably easy that way. But let's say you got Cash App in the UK and in the US. I got Cash App, but as you know, we have to tie it to our British and American bank accounts. So if somebody wants to work here, they should get um, Qatar. I mean, I'm sorry, they should get the Cash App um, and tie it to a local bank account before you leave the U.S. and get Cash App installed on your phone, because once you leave and you're not in the U.S. or UK anymore, you can't even download Cash App. You hear about it, but you can't really download it. You got to go through extra steps. I had to get somebody to walk me through it. But the other thing to use is an app called Wise, just WISE. That's a good one. You can get that one to draft from your bank account and then to send as a recipient to another bank account in a foreign country that you have. So you can use that for transferring. Payoneer is a good service too. That's pretty good. And then, especially if you're collecting money from people and they're not paying you in cash, you can give them your Wise account, and then from there transfer it to your U.S. or your foreign or your UK account. Um, so those are the main things I would use in that case. Keep your account in your home country, Cash App if it's the U.S. or the UK, Wise to transfer between back and forth, um, and then but actually here a lot of purchases are not made with cash anymore. Cash is an option here, and if as long as you're in the country legally as a visitor or otherwise, you can go to a currency exchange and get cash. But I found actually that the my US bank card worked at ATMs, um, and then when I got my local, of course they worked. But yeah, you can use your US or UK bank card at ATM to pull out some cash. um Sometimes you can pay for stuff at a grocery store with it, and sometimes you can't. It's hit or miss. um the newer cards are the ones that are the most likely to work. So if you get a new bank card from your UK bank account, and then you were to come here as a visitor, more than likely it would work.
Amazing, amazing, bro. So, brother, is Saudi cashless, or is it mostly cash?
No, Saudi is actually a lot of both. It's a lot of cash purchases and a lot of electronic purchases. Uh, let's see, even going to barbershops here now. You go to a real barbershop, yeah, you have the option to pay them with your card. And they've got these, I don't know if they have them in the States. I think they do, but they've got these POS, point of sales machines where you tap your card to it and pay them. Um, I think I saw one once on my last trip to the US. So and you guys in the UK, you generally are more advanced than we are in terms of international payments. So I'm sure you all have it. I think it's very similar to what you might have experienced in the UK. Sure, you can use cash, you can use your card, and people are ready to take payment for both because it's money for them either way.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. So, brother, when you pay for stuff in Saudi, brother, are you using your American card or are you using your Saudi card? And if so, why do you use that particular card, depending on your answer, brother?
I normally use my Saudi bank card now, but I have used my American card before. Um, I had an American bank card, and I used it all the way up until it just stopped working one day, no matter where I used it. I called my bank in the States and they said, well, we issued you a new card, but they only issued it in the US. It wasn't going to come to my address here. So I told them, F you very much, and hung up on them. But I mean, if they hadn't issued a new card to replace it, it would have continued working as long as there was money in that account. So um, the thing is that you got these cards that have the chip in them that's visible from the front. That's probably been going on a better part of a decade by now. Most of the point of sales machines do require you to have that. Whatever country your bank is in, the card that's issued to that account, generally you just need that chip that's visible in the front. Um, if you just wanted to wave it and scan it, but no, it's not a cashless society. They're very much good about keeping both options open. You pay in cash or you pay by card. Sometimes yeah, sometimes some people will say, look, we're not taking cash, but it's rare. I know one restaurant that does that. um, it's only one. I don't even know the name of the restaurant, I just know where it is, and their food is healthy. They don't take cash, but pretty much every other place you can pay either way.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. So, next question for you, brother, right now is food, brother. Brother, can you break down Saudi Arabian food? Is it tasty? Is it good food? And what's your favorite cuisine, brother, in Saudi Arabia? Break it down for us.
Sure. The Saudi national dish is pretty much what they call kapsa. It's just rice and some sort of cooked meat. Usually it's chicken, and then they like to eat a lot of lamb here too. And I won't lie, lamb is good. Uh, and funny enough, at weddings and things, you can get camel meat. You can go to a wedding and they have camel meat and it tastes like lamb. No joke. Um, First time I had camel meat, I didn't know it was a camel. I thought it was just a new lamb recipe. I was like, man, this is good. It's like lamb, but y'all must have fed this lamb something different. And they said it's not a lamb. I said, oh, okay, cool. Well, what is it? I know it's not a person, so what is it? Um, because I tend to like meat anyway. Other than pork and pork predators and people. I'm a carnitarian almost. I like vegetables and meat, but meat, there's hardly a meat that I don't like except for the three P's I just mentioned. So they told me it was camel meat. And my brother who eats chitlins, I told him, hey man, I had camel meat and I thought it was lamb. My brother said, man, that's disgusting. I was like, oh, this coming from a guy that eats chitlins, man. Get out of my face with that. But yeah, it's rice with the meat, and the rice, they got different types of rice. They usually have like a yellow rice from Afghanistan. They call it Bukhari. You could get a red rice they call amber rice. And it's sad because they do serve a lot of rice and a little meat. You have to tell them more meat, less rice, because if not, they're just going to, pile the rice on because it's cheap. And so there's an obesity problem here. I'm not going to front. You got an obesity problem, and it used to be worse. But it's getting a little better now. People are more health conscious. Here's the thing: if you go to someone's house, they'll generally cook it pretty well, but the women that cook are going to put vegetables in it because they're hoping that the men will eat the vegetables because it keeps you healthier. As you know, you can perform better, right? I'm not going to say too much more than that, but you understand. You're in better shape. I'll just put it like that. The men here hate to eat vegetables. They hate it. They'll take every carrot, cucumber, tomato, put it off to the side, dig in, go straight for the meat and the rice, clog themselves up. Biggest houses sometimes in these small towns because there's nothing else to do but eat. So, but the food it's not, the cups is not bad. You got different sauces that they can make it with. And really the sauce is going to be what determines how good it is. But cups is about the only dish that is really across the board in Saudi Arabia. Different regions have their own different dishes. They got grits. It's kind of like grits, but they make it from cracked wheat. It tastes pretty good, actually. It's a good breakfast food, but they'll eat it for lunch or dinner too. Let's see what else. And on the coastal areas, they do have seafood, and it's not bad generally. But there's a lot of foreign food here. That's what I was going to tell you. A lot of the food here is not from the peninsula, except maybe Yemen. Yemeni restaurants are pretty tasty, Syrian, but I'm an African, and I like West African cooking. I can't find it here. But if I can find a Nigerian restaurant here, I will eat egusi soup and pepper soup and pepper chicken regularly. But I haven't found one yet. Now, Sudanese restaurants, they tend to specialize in grilled meat. So I'll go in when I just want a good, I just want some good grilled slices of beef or lamb. I'll go there. But I haven't found one in the city I'm living in now. But yeah, most of the time, honestly, man, people aren't really eating the food that's from here. When they really want to go out and have a good eating experience, they eat Italian food, Chinese, Japanese, a mixture. Here's the thing: most people are going to like eating here because of the options that are available. You have a Brazilian churrascaria in one in each big city here in this country. Riyadh's got maybe more than one. I'm sure Jeddah has one at least. I bet money they do. There's another one in Khobar. We saw it on our way to Bahrain. So yeah, you got these Brazilian steakhouses. You've got food from you got restaurants from Malaysia, but you have, and this is going to blow people's minds, you got Texas Steakhouse, Outback, Cheesecake Factory, Popeyes, bro.
Popeyes, what?
Yes,
Bruv.
yes.
I love Popeyes.
Oh yeah. I'm not done blowing your mind yet, IP, because you're from the UK. You know about this. You know about Nando's. I'm not supposed to know as a Yankee. Yes, they got Nando's here. They got it in Riyadh. Several locations in Riyadh. They got them in Jeddah, Mecca, Medina. Let's see, yeah, and Khobar and the Dammam area. They got Nando's here too. In all these different areas, all these bigger cities, they got Nando's in. I think they got about 3 or 4 branches in Riyadh alone. You can find Nando's. Yes. Now Nando's is halal even in the UK it's halal. In South Africa where it got started it's halal even there because a lot of Muslims like to eat it. And so of course it has to be by law here in this country. You have it in Malaysia. I know it was in Kuala Lumpur. I saw it there. But yeah, you're going to find it here. So the stuff that you're used to eating in the West, you're going to find here right next to where you can find something that's more closer to home. Like you can find, North African and Mediterranean Arab cooking here and the Nando's or Outback might be right next door, depending on where you are. I say about 2 months ago when my son was here, he and I ate at Outback. Then let's see, my wife and I have eaten at Applebee's a few times. And you remember when the American women were talking about don't bring me to no Cheesecake Factory? Remember that?
Yep.
Well, so what I did was my wife and I scheduled a trip where we were going to meet up in Riyadh because the flights to get to Riyadh were cheap for her and me. So I said, okay, we'll make a weekend out of it. Let's go to Riyadh. And I went to the Cheesecake Factory. I took her there in Riyadh. They got more than one in Riyadh. And it was good. It tastes like the ones in the States or in the UK. But of course, again, the meat is halal. So, and no pork. But yeah, it tastes about the same. And then for that was dinner, but for lunch, um, we uh, we actually went to this place that's only local where they had camel meat over rice. So you do get options. I will say you got options. You just pick a genre for the most part. Except only thing that burns me the f up, I can't find a Nigerian restaurant or a Jamaican restaurant. I think they have one in Jeddah, but I don't live there. Um, I can't find an Ethiopian restaurant. So when you start looking at Africa and its diaspora specifically, you're pretty much limited to Sudan. I'm not going to count an Egyptian restaurant or a North African restaurant as African. Uh, but I mean, in terms of food, maybe that's wrong. I don't know, but I know your audience and mine are going to assume that I'm talking about tropical African if I say African. So, Sudan is about, yeah, Sudan's about it. Um, you can eat African food, but you probably just have to make friends with one of the families and then eat dinner with them to get it. That's all.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. Great intel so far, brother. So, Mr. Black Mind, next question for you, brother, is cost of living. So, brother, when you compare cost of living in Saudi Arabia to America, is America more expensive? Is Saudi Arabia more expensive? Are you living is your money going further in Saudi Arabia, brother, as opposed to America? Break it down for us, brother.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, I wouldn't go back to the States now. I would not do it. I'm sure that that right now with the U.S. economy being what it is, it's worse than this economy here. This one's hard, and because people are still adjusting to ever having had a hard economy at all. Whereas in the States, it was already bad and it just gets worse. So it is better here. Yes, hands down. From everything people are telling me about States, it is better here. You can now. There are a lot of jobs here where they pay you a little over 1,000 US a month, but you're not going to leave where you live to come here and do that. If you come here with a skill and either you can teach or you can do something in computers, you come here with something like that, you can earn between 3 to 5,000 US a month. Um, and the real is pegged to the US dollar. So that's why I'm using the US dollar, because the conversion rate always stays the same. I would try to give it in pounds, but I know that fluctuates. And next week it may not be the same information. But yeah, you can get between 3 to 5,000 US if you're skilled and educated, and if you're working in education. So I would say that it's pretty well worth it in that regard. I'm saving now. Um, my Yeah, I'm saving now. And one thing that is expensive are private schools. If you have your kids here, don't put them in the public schools. You may not even be allowed to, really, depending on your citizenship. Not every nationality is allowed in the public schools. Um, but you may not. Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to do that anyway. They don't really do a good job in all areas of the country. Um, that's another topic as to where the schools are good. That's another topic for another day. But private school education can be expensive here. So sometimes if a family is well paid, but they got several kids, they might do homeschooling. I don't know how it works, but I know it is an option. Um, so if you're able to homeschool, then you can save. Yeah, you can save even if you have kids. My wife and I both work, and I recently got a job that's paying well enough, and I don't have to pay that exorbitant Riyadh rent. So I've begun to save more recently. Plus, some of my audience members have been generous. I have to admit, they've come through, they've been generous, and um, so yeah, I'm saving up a little more now than I ever was before. But yeah, this is not too difficult a place to save. Now, Saudi's easier to save in than even some of the other Gulf nations because the entertainment here tends to be, I would say, it since it doesn't involve alcohol, it does tend to be safer. Um, so yeah, if you were going to, if you want occasional entertainment but you still want to save, then the best place to be is a big or medium sized city in Saudi Arabia. That's the optimal situation, I would say.
Amazing, amazing, bro. Fantastic. So, brother, you're saying that you can become richer in Saudi Arabia than in America. You can save more money in Saudi Arabia. You can have more money to play with, brother, in Saudi than in America, bro. That's insane. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah, you can. I had to interview some people that wanted to work in the kingdom, and it's a long story, but for about 3 days, I had to do interviews. This was at a job where I wasn't allowed to stay because of a legal reason. It wasn't anything. There was no complaint. It was just my old employer pulled the dick move. I'm sorry about that. They pulled a slick move. Um, to block me from transferring because they knew it was going to be a better job. But in the process of interviewing some of these other
Was that
people,
Saudi? Sorry, brother. Was that person a Saudi or a South African white person that blocked you?
the one that blocked me, it was actually an HR office. It was a few people, and I never got their names. But I'll tell you who protected me, though. It was a Sudanese brother that protected me. They were going to do worse if they could. He stepped in and protected me. Sudanese guy.
Whoa.
He didn't even know that I was a Black American at the time.
Why were they coming after you, brother? What was the reason for that?
I'll give the short story to not bore you, but the thing was that due to my old project manager trying to save money, because here native English speakers get paid more to teach English because it's our first language. Plus, we have to have credentials, so we have both. We got that advantage, so we do get paid more. If you come in with a U.S. passport, British, like I said, they don't hire Australians to teach English for some odd reason. I don't know why, but they should. But anyway, South African, Canadian, U.S., UK, New Zealand, these nationalities are paid more to teach English. Well, I do my job well to earn that money, but I'm not going to do it for less. So my project manager thought, well, if I get rid of Black Mind and Mrs. Mind, then I save money because I just replace them with non-native teachers. So he tried to do that. Well, what happened was that he lied to the head of the English department and told the head of the English department, the HOD, that Black Mind had a job in Riyadh that I did not actually have. He said, we're transferring him to Riyadh. We got a position for him. But he was going to do the same thing to Mrs. Mind, but he was stopped on the elevator on the way to turn her name in to not be included where we were living. So she got to stay. She had to stay, actually, and I had to leave. And that's why we're living apart now. So when they called me up, they already had a job. They had two positions. One was in Riyadh, which was easy to get to from where my wife lived. And then there was another one in this really small hole in the wall place. As a matter of fact, the name of the place actually means hole, HOLE. That's the name of the place if you translate it. It means hole. So they called me up and they said, okay, the university in Riyadh declined to hire you. No, they did not. Somebody was lying because they would have told me if they did. So, but the HR lady that called me said, well, listen, we have a position in Hull for you. And I said to her, no, because I know everything about the work in Hull. They did not have housing arranged for us. They didn't have it. They didn't have transportation arranged. And so that meant that as a native English speaking teacher, I would have had to pay a fortune, maybe half of what I earned, just to have a place to live and get to and from work, because nobody was going to transport me for a reasonable price. As far as they're concerned, they don't have to. So when she told me that they had housing and transportation, somebody lied to her and she was telling me to lie. So I told her, look, they lied to you, ma'am. They don't have it. I already know. I checked. They don't have it there. And plus, it's 17 hours away from where my wife lives. So you're not supposed to transfer me away from my wife anyway, according to company policy, but y'all are doing it. So I'm refusing that position. Either you put me in Riyadh, which is closer to my wife, or you put me back where my wife is still living, or you know what? I'll just stay in this country illegally, but you're not going to put me in a Bedouin town again, 17 hours away from my wife. And so what I said was legal, and it was according to company policy anyway, but they still had a vendetta. So, and they had it against anybody that refused to go work in Hull. So when they tried that with me, when I found another job, they decided to disapprove of the transfer of my residency, my sponsorship. The only way they could do it was to give me a final exit visa and then not cancel it. So they tried to do that, and they won. I had to go ahead and take a position, but the Sudanese guy set it up to where the position I had to take, not in whole, it was a position in Riyadh, but it was a bad one. But he said you'll only be there for a month because there's a new project and they don't have a native English speaking teacher to work it except you. So you have to come with me at the end of that month. He looked out for me. And now he's looking out for my wife because she's about to jump ship. And he's helping her with that process too. So
and he's black.
that's
he's a black Sudanese guy. Amazing.
Absolutely. And people don't understand when I say this, but there is a type of black unity here. And it's not only in Saudi that I've seen it, but I have seen it in Saudi. And now, granted, if you're not Muslim, there are still certain benefits. If somebody treats you wrong, then you have some kind of backing as long as it's evidence that you were treated wrongly. But the actual unity and love, for black folk here that are Muslim, which is a lot of us anyway, there is actually a unity. He didn't know I was a black American when he started looking out for me. But when I met him, and we had to ride to another city for about 4 hours. That's when he found out that I was African American, because I was telling him the history of how one of the Sudanese guys was a big help to Malcolm X in the U.S. He asked, like, how did you know? I said, man, if you're black, you got to learn black history growing up. And so that's when he realized it. So, but after that point, he really looked out. He said he would let me know. He said, okay, look, the client is about to make these changes. They're doing it because they want to have a reason to put something on your record so that they can't give you this raise. They can justify not giving you a raise later, something like that. So, so get ready for this change. They're going to make this rule. Go ahead and obey it before they make it, and take that away from them. I was like, okay, cool, bet, thanks, man. Good looking out. And he told me what emails to send when I wanted to transfer my sponsorship to my current employer. He told me who to send it to, what emails to send. I did it. It worked. So yeah, he looked out for me the whole time. And he even said to me, he was the one that told me in HR, they had a vendetta against not just you, but anybody that refused to go work in whole. He was the one that broke that down. He ratted them, he snitched them out to me.
So brother, next question for you, brother, right, is in terms of brother, investments, brother. So brother, we have around we can do 3 hours, right, brother? Is that what you've said? Is that okay?
Yeah, did you say 3 or 4?
Did you want to do 3 hours, right, brother?
Yeah, I could do 3. Yeah.
Okay, brother. So we have around 1 hour, 15 minutes left, brother. So I've got some few questions here, brother. This is the first time it's on Saudi Arabia, and brother, it's been an amazing stream so far, brother. So next question for you, brother, right, is in terms of so brother, investments, right? As passport bros, hopefully, brother, when there's crypto stuff pops off, when brothers get into IT, book your IT consultation with me, brothers, right now. Get into IT, book your consultations with me and IT, brothers, right now, ASAP. And brothers, get some cash, right, brother. Are there any, brother, investment opportunities, brother, in Saudi Arabia?
To tell the truth, nowadays, as long as you're living here legally with a job, you're allowed to actually buy property. Foreigners are allowed to buy 1 property apiece. Citizens can buy as many as they can afford to buy. And when I say citizens, I mean not just Saudi, but any Gulf state citizen. So a Qatari, a Kuwaiti, a Emirati, and Omani, they can, and a Saudi, they can all buy property within Bahraini. So they can all buy property in each other's jurisdictions, as many as they can afford. If you're a non-citizen of one of these and you're living here legally, you can buy 1 property. You're allowed to own 1 property now. And I wouldn't say that these properties are cheap. They're less than what you pay in the States and in the UK, I'm sure. But I can't necessarily say they're cheap per se. I don't know much more than that about investments, actually. I'm sure that there are, but I'm not the expert. I just don't know exactly which investments they are and which ones they're not. If you have $1 million Riyal to drop into something, I believe you can start a business, and you don't have to have a local that sponsors you and registers it in their name. But you pretty much got to drop $1 million Riyal into it from jump. Most what what I noticed though is, and I wouldn't tell someone to do it, I would tell them to ask a local lawyer first before they looked into it. What I can say is that when I walk into some of the multinational franchises like McDonald's or Burger King, when I used to eat there, I would notice that there would be something on the wall that would show a holding company that was still local that had the franchise. Um, so
Awesome.
I I can't really say that, like, I can't sit up and say that a foreigner just came in, dropped 1 million, and then he was allowed to own that franchise of that particular business. I can't say that. Like Starbucks has you got the Starbucks franchises, but there's some holding companies that are still locally registered that own those franchise locations. So I haven't actually heard of a foreigner uh, owning a successful business, with one exception, and that's actually because he's a citizen of another country. There's a grocery store called Lulu Hypermarket that's owned by an Indian man, but he's a citizen of the UAE, I think it is. So that's why he was allowed to do that, and it did take off. It's doing well.
Okay, awesome, brother. Fantastic. Brother, next question for you, brother, is now, brother, in terms of safety, brother. So, brother, safety in the daytime, safety in the nighttime, being by yourself, brother. Brother, is Saudi and Riyadh and Arar, and wherever you've been to in Saudi, brother, are those safe? Is it safe country in general, brother? No one will attack you, no gang violence, no threats against you, brother, no extortion, no kidnapping, brother. Is it safe for a Western brother?
It is so safe that it's ridiculous. To give you an idea, when I first got here, first got to the kingdom, I mean, about 10 years back, and some change, I was, of course, pretty sad because I had to leave had to move away from my kids. That hurt. That really did. And so one night with jet lag and having a bad dream about being separated from my kids, I just woke up about 2 something a.m. I couldn't go back to sleep, right? So I said, well, I never really withdrew any cash. So let me go to the ATM, test out my card. I did this at about 3 in the morning. And this is in Arar. I did this about 3 in the morning. I walked downstairs, walked out to an ATM. It was cold because Arar's in the north. And I went to the ATM. And you know how sometimes when you're grieving, you wish your mother cuss word would. You've heard Cedric the Entertainer joke about that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was in that state of mind. I went to the ATM at night because I thought maybe somebody's going to try me and I just knock them out. Maybe I'll feel a little better. It was a stupid way to think it in my late 30s at the time, but uh, it dawned on me, wait a minute. No, I heard about Saudi being safe. So no, that's a dumb idea. I should just get the cash because I need it. I went and there was one car on the road, one car, just one car. Nobody was even out at night. And later, a few days later, when I made some, by this point, I'd made some friends from some locals that lived in the neighborhood behind the hotel. Uh, they actually accepted me into their tribe. Like they gave me permission to use their tribal last name. Um, but anyway, I went to the bank with one of them. He was running an errand. I was just riding along, and we went to this bank. And this guy walked into the bank with I'm talking, a chest full of cash in his hands by himself. He didn't have an armed guard with him. He just walked in with a bunch of cash in both hands, holding it up to his chest. And I looked at him in shock. And when he looked back at me, I gave him the head nod, like, hello. And he smiled back. And he said, good morning. And went on into the bank. And I asked my friend, hey, man, why does he walk around with all that cash? And he said he was probably buying a house or a car. Yeah, but where's his bodyguard? And he looked at me and said, what does he need a bodyguard for? He's not a part of the royal family. Yeah, but he's walking around with as much cash as one. He said, oh, yeah, I heard about that in America. But no. He said, no, it's safe here. If somebody robs him, then they're going to go to prison for a long time. And if they do anything violent, they might die. And so okay. So even though the laws are less strict than what they used to be, many people don't know if a punishment's been relaxed. Most people don't know. So everybody still has a mindset, if you commit a crime against somebody, you're going to really, really pay dearly for it. And some crimes are still a capital offense. So the safety's top notch. My son, when he came to visit for 3 weeks, he got ready to leave. I remember we were at the airport and he felt nervous and scared about going back to the US. Here, people will get out of a car to go into to go into like a bodega, if you want to call it that. They'll go into these little mini markets, leave their car running, unlock, and come back out. It's still there. I don't even lock my car doors a lot of times, honestly. And I've forgotten my cell phone maybe once in the car, and it was unlocked. It was still there. My wife has done it a few times. She'll go back out to the car without the key, open it, pull the cell phone out. It's still there. Students will sometimes mistakenly leave a tablet or a laptop in the classroom, and it's still there. Somebody will pick it up and they'll say, look, whose laptop is this? Oh, it's so-and-so's. Could you tell him that I got it? This is my number. Tell him to call me. I'll bring it to him. Stuff like that. I had my ATM card once still in the machine, and a guy came running out and handed it to me. Safety is top notch. The danger is traffic. People here, and it depends on where you are. And that's getting better, actually. So yeah. If the people here are not cowards, they will fight if you challenge them. But people just aren't really that violent here. And safety is top notch. So really a traffic accident is the most likely bad thing to happen to you. The most realistic danger is a traffic accident.
Brother, what about in terms of, brother, power trips, brother? So obviously you're a foreigner there, and obviously we know for a fact that Saudis have more power than the average foreigner in Saudi Arabia. But do Saudis take advantage of the power they have over foreigners? Maybe in the workplace, go on power trips, disrespect you, try and get you in trouble, or try and fight you, try and extort you, or try and proposition you for something crazy, knowing that they have more power than you in the country. Is that common there, brother, or is that overthinking things?
It's an extant phenomena. It does exist, but it's not a common thing. It's something that you hear about because the cases where it does happen are actually pretty sensational. So you hear about it on occasion. Citizens do have more power than foreigners. That part is true. Now, there are some nationalities they still don't want to mess with. That's also the case. They don't want to mess around with you or me. That's one thing. But the other thing too is, and this is, people don't realize this, but they don't want to mess over Nigerians either. People don't know this, but a lot of Nigerians may not even be aware of it. But Nigerians here work at every level of the economy, from doctors. Actually, I take it back. Not every level. They don't, because here they don't do menial labor. Nigerians here don't do things like work at Starbucks, when I think about it. So I take that back. No, they don't work those kinds of jobs. They're professors, doctors, nurses for the most part. They're working in things like this, maybe something to do with IT as well. So they're professionals. And if they're considered failures, as an example, then maybe they're entry-level IT or a nurse. So I'm talking by comparison to others. So no, Nigerians also don't really get messed with. They got respect. I get that to them. They got respect here. For one, the ones that do the scamming can't really scam anybody here. That's one thing. So they don't have the reputation. The stereotype is not applied to them for scamming here. The UAE, yes, they are reputed to be scammers. When it's true and when it's not, everybody suffers for their reputation. But here in Saudi, they don't have a reputation, so they're pretty respected. Sudanese are also respected. They don't mess. Here they don't try to power trip on Sudanese that much. Most of the time, they don't really want a power trip. But when it comes to, if you do want to see who's going to do that, make them work hard and not be lazy. So like if I crack down on cheating, a few years ago, I did make enemies for that. And to be honest with you, this is what I found out. My enemies weren't Saudi. That's the other thing. When I cracked down on cheating, my enemies were Egyptians and Jordanians. The Sudanese were not my enemies. The Saudis were not my enemies. It was Egyptians, Jordanians. The only Saudis that were my enemies were the students that wanted to cheat. And that was most of them. They were real bad at that stage. And that changed about between 2020 and 2022, that changed. But and then my friend I told you about, the Afghan American, he did face this. because he wasn't going to let the teachers be lazy when it came to cheating. A lot of teachers would let the students cheat because they cheated when they were students, and he was going to crack down. So you did have this one guy that was going to make trouble, and that's the first time that somebody really tried to flex on him the whole time he'd been here in this country. None of them have ever really tried that with me before. They never have. To be honest with you, when you find that people are doing something shady and they're willing to do any kind of corruption to keep it going, you usually find either it's a teenager, if it's a Saudi, it's usually a teenager involved somewhere, or you'll find that it's an Egyptian, sometimes a Jordanian, but an Egyptian. They're known for their corruption. They have their reputation. And one of the reasons why you got more Nigerians being brought in is to replace the Egyptians, because it's funny because here Saudis actually look at black folks as being more honest. That's the other thing.
Yeah, amazing. Damn.
Yeah, the
So,
Sudanese have the highest reputation for honesty, but they generally do look at black folks as being more honest, less likely to lie, and that's a stereotype that actually works in our favor. And the other thing is that they black men, regardless of nationality, black men are reputed to be more romantic, and black women are reputed to be more loyal and less materialistic.
oh, brother, we'll get to the woman part very soon. I know everyone's waiting for that. That's gonna be a classic, brother. We'll get to that, brother. So, next question for you, bro. Right, is have you ever been called the N-word there, brother? Or have you ever heard the N-word said to a black person or said to you in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
I was talking to my wife one day about 2021. It was, I think, February 2021. There was an event that was held in this town that I mean, I could call it the city where I used to live. I just got through visiting there earlier today, but back when I lived there, there was some event. It was at some resort. So we went. People were bringing their families, and my wife and I were there. Now, she and I talked. Most of the conversation is in English. We'll use Arabic. Some things we might say in Somali. I don't speak it that well, but we were talking in English, and she didn't remember where this particular mini restaurant was. I think it was a smoothie shop that they set up, a little makeshift smoothie shop temporarily. So she didn't remember exactly where it was, but I did. So I said, "No, sweetheart, it's not that direction. You need to come over here. Come on this way." And this little kid heard me speaking, and he said, "Yeah, come on, N-word." And I looked at the little
What?
boy. Yeah, I looked at the little boy. I said, "Hey, kid, come tell me who taught you this, because this is not his first language." So he started to back away. And I said, "Kid, listen, I'm taller than you. I'm faster than you. I'm going to catch you if you run, but I'm not violent. Come here and tell me who told you this, who taught you that word." And he still tried to back away. So I got ready to run and catch this little boy. He was wearing a thobe. He was not going to outrun me. Little short legs, wearing a robe. No, I was going to catch him. But a grown man appeared out of nowhere and said, "What did he say to you?" And I told the grown man, he used the N-word. And I said to him, I told him that's actually an insult. You can't say it to people just casually like that. You got to really know someone, and then it's a joke. If you don't know someone, you say it to a stranger. It's like me calling him the T word, and I don't mean tourist either. So the light went off in his eyes, like, "Oh, that, okay, yeah." So he leaned over and said something to the little boy, and the little boy started shaking out of fear. I don't know what he said. He said it in his ear. The boy started shaking out of fear. And the kid said, "I am sorry." And so the man turned to me and explained to me in English, he didn't know that it was a bad word. He just knew you didn't like it. And so, I mean, I didn't hate the kid. I figured that he saw it in a movie, because they do see it in movies. They don't really know. The ones that don't know English that well really don't even know that it's a bad word. They think it's just a joke. They think it's like that. So sometimes they'll say, "I'm an N-word because I can rap," and you have to tell them, "You don't say that about yourself." Now, my students last semester are fluent in English. So they actually said to me, they didn't use it. They asked me who has a pass to use the N word, and I told them that the last N word pass expired a decade ago. No one has it, not even me. And they laughed about it. But yeah, they're ignorant about what it really means. Some think it just means black man, and now they have an insult here in this country. They got two ways to say they got two ways to disparage blackness. One is to use the word slave, and another one is to use the word
That's
Zanji
fake.
or Zanuj. I'm sorry.
Zanji. So I thought so. Zanji, Anuj, and Abid. Abid.
Yeah, Abid is the plural, Abd is the singular, and then Zanji is a word used in old Arabic. They used it like the way we would use Negro, and then nowadays they use it the way we would use the N word. They mean it as an insult. So if they say that, they clearly mean it as an insult. And so Zanuj is the plural form. Now, I've heard some people call us slaves because since I don't look like us in these little country towns, people are casual with it. And they don't really hate you when they say slave, but they wouldn't call their dad that. So what I would start doing is I would just call them the T word again. And I don't mean tourist either. So some would say you can't say that. And I would say, well, you can't call us slaves. And I would
T
tell
word.
them,
So,
look, I know you.
but
Yeah.
is T word is that an Arabic slur towards Arabic people?
Yeah. The Arabic translation for it is irhabi. And if you call them that, yeah, it's a slur because they know white people call them that word.
T word. Brother, can
Um,
you type in the private chat for me, please? What that T word
yeah,
is?
yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Let's see. Terr. Oops, I hit one key wrong. My bad. My bad. Goodness, I
Damn.
swear. All right, there we go. It's there.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay, brother. Yeah, I get you.
That one. Yep, that
Yeah.
one. Kaboom, right? So I would they would casually use the word slave to describe black people without hatred, but it's still wrong. And they would say, well, we don't mean any harm. I know they didn't mean it, but I would still say, well, then call your father on the phone right now, call him a slave, and don't say slave of God or slave of the King of Kings or slave of the Almighty. Just call him slave. I can't do that. Okay, well, screw you, you T word. And so they actually, though they would try to correct me, what I would remain firm on that, and I would tell them, look, I know you don't commit crimes like mass murder, but you know that we're not slaves. We don't belong to anybody. They would actually say, you know what? Yeah, you're being fair. That's not wrong. Um, so they actually took correction better than your average white Westerner would, because when you white Westerner use the N word, they mean that and they don't
Mm.
apologize for it. So they were more corrigible, and they would actually say, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to stop this mess. Some of them would say, well, I when I'm playing a video game with my black friend and he's winning, I might call him that. And I would say, well, what does he call you? And they would say, oh, well, he might call me something like cheese, or he might call me a homo, or different things like that. But it was never race. So I actually started to teach some black Saudis I knew, call them the T word. I would tell some
Yeah.
black Saudis, I would say, if your friend is playing, then you play back, but you call them the T word. If somebody's serious, then you be serious back and you call them the T word. But don't let them get away with it, whether it's a joke or it's serious. Respond, because that's the one that hurts them. And I don't know if it's caught on yet, but at some point it will, because the ones, once they find out that I'm black, the non-black Saudis, when they find out I'm black, one thing I can say is that they don't use that word again in front of me, at least, because if we've ever come close to violence, it's been behind that. That's the closest I've come, and that wasn't that close. But I've been prepared to actually slug it out. And usually, if somebody's angry with me, like, look, man, I'll fight you about this, it's not because I protected my race. It'll be because I may have corrected someone that they're close to, like their uncle or something. And they're not really fighting because I protected my race. It's they want to protect their uncle's honor or something like that. And even then, we haven't actually come to blows. But I've been prepared to, and I think some of them have too. But yeah, they say it casually without really thinking when they're just having a discussion. And then I'll
Is it
call them
common?
on it.
Is it
Yeah,
common?
it is.
That's saying. Oh wow.
That's
Hold
one of
on.
the reasons That's one of the reasons I quit spending a lot of spare time and socializing with non-black Saudis. That's one of the reasons. It's not that they're hateful, but they just so casually say it. I just said I don't want to hear it no more. And I don't. And I would say, you're not equal to them. Black people are superior to you as an individual because they never called you the T word, but you call them this.
Brother, what about in the workplace, brother? Have you ever been called those kind of slurs in the workplace at all?
No, I have not. In the workplace, people don't want to make that mistake because, in all honesty, it's kind of hard to prove that someone said it if there aren't any witnesses. But if there are witnesses and there's evidence that someone called you that, you can sue them for 50,000 riyals.
Awesome, brother. Now, brother, so what about people who are not Saudis, brother? Obviously, you mentioned why South Africans are racist. We know that already, brother. What about Jordanians, Syrians, Egyptians? Are they racist towards black people in Saudi Arabia?
I would say that in actuality, they're more likely to be racist than Saudis are. Jordanians are usually not racist; they're nationalist. They don't even understand. To them, racial bias is less it makes less sense to them than it does even to a Saudi. Racial bias, but they are nationalist, I would say. Like they don't. I'll put it like this: a Saudi man might not understand why I would marry a black woman because of my appearance. And be like, well, why would you do it? You don't have to marry a black woman. No, the question is, why would I not marry a black woman if we're talking about race? Now, culture, yes, I don't touch a Western black woman with a 10-foot pole unless we're related. But like phenotypically, that's not the problem yet. I must say, Western sisters are starting to change that about me too. But a Jordanian would be like, well, I wouldn't marry one, but why? What's wrong if a black man and a black woman like each other? That's normal. They at least have that idea of equality. But when it comes to nationalism, yes, they can be quite nationalist. Syrians are all over the place in terms of like how they feel about race. They're all over the place. You'll meet a white, and they're the white-looking Arabic speakers. You'll see them with blonde hair, blue eyes, speaking Arabic, and their name will be Bilal. You will find some of them with the name Bilal. I was tripping when I saw it. I was like, wait, your name is Bilal? The other thing is you'll see some of them really pale, blonde hair, blue eyes, but that blonde hair is kinky. Like you don't try to run a comb through it or you'll shoot yourself. I'm talking they could rob a bank with a comb. So you'll see that with the Syrians, but the attitudes generally tend to be all over the place. The average Syrian doesn't hate black folks, but when it comes to black Westerners, they have these white conservative attitudes like, well, if you black folks would pick yourselves up by the bootstraps. And so then you have to tell them, well, we can say that to each other, but don't act like it's an even playing field. Well, no, it's even now. My cousin went to America with $5 in his pocket and now he's successful. Okay, yeah, your cousin was selling alcohol to poor black people and selling out his religion in America. That's how you make money. Go ahead and check, see if your uncle's still Muslim even. So they'll do that. They are like that now. Egyptians, yes. Egyptians, northern Egyptians that are not black or either even partially black.
Hello.
Hands down. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear now, bro. Fire away.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm glad I came back. But yeah, Egyptians, yes. Egyptians canceled Kevin Hart for referring to the blackness of the ancient Egyptians. He was right. Now, Jada Pinkett Smith got Cleopatra wrong. It was Nefertiti and Nefertari that were the black lady pharaohs, not Cleopatra. Cleopatra was actually Greek. That they were right about that. But they didn't cancel Jada Pinkett Smith because of that. They did it because she referred to any pharaoh as black. Them ninjas are racist, hands down. Yes, absolutely. They will tell you that they're racist. The educated Egyptians will use the N-word. They know it's an insult. They will use it casually in English. They don't fibberguck. They canceled Kevin Hart simply because he said he was looking forward to going to the land of his ancestors. They were like, no, these are not your ancestors, N-word. So yeah, they are. And it was an Egyptian guy that told me, he said, Egyptians are racist. Even the educated ones, racist. We're just mean. Now, truth be told, Egyptians don't like each other that much either. So they don't only have a racial bias, but that's one of the biases they have. Egyptians don't even like Egyptians, black or white. Egyptians don't even like Egyptians that are honest with people. So if an Egyptian sells you something and he tells you the right price for it, the other ones will make fun of him and be like, why did you do that? You could have told him it was X, Y, and Z. And they'll avoid him because he's honest. I've seen that happen too.
So it's basically right. So you don't experience racism in your workplace. But let's say a passport bro is living in Saudi Arabia right now. What places and what situations will he experience racism, brother? Will it be in the street when he's walking down the street with his shopping and then some Egyptian calls him the N-word? You know, how does racism actually formulate, brother, in that country, in Saudi Arabia, amongst those people, not in the workplace?
Well, let's say you say you're a black man, passport brewer, SYSBM, shopping, you're moving about. To tell the truth, a lot of the racism that you would, if somebody's racist, they're probably not Saudi. If they're Saudi, they're probably really better when uneducated, and they're probably older too, or they're like really young and they learned it from some of their parents. They're not likely to actually say stuff like that to your face, and so there is that. Now, let's say you come across an Egyptian. It could depend on your nationality. An Egyptian will probably say something to a Ugandan that they wouldn't say to a black Britisher or a black American, because we will slap the stew out of them. And we actually won't get in trouble. If we have a witness that this Egyptian said whatever, we're not going to be in that much trouble. We might have to pay a fine. We might actually get arrested for an assault if we swung the first punch. But when the witnesses start saying, no, he didn't say anything until the Egyptian called him this word or that or the other, you're probably going to get off with a little fine or something, unless you really put them in the hospital. Then you're going to sit in jail until they heal. But in all honesty, you're not really likely to find this coming from the citizens. The citizens are more likely to fuck the shuck up and not swear at you, because they know if there's a witness, they're going to have to pay $50,000 if you take them to court. Or you can insult them and the witnesses would say, well, no, they insulted each other, so they're even. So the lawsuits cancel each other out. Like I said, most citizens don't really want to risk embarrassing their country in front of other countries. They'd rather play it safe. If they don't like you, they just don't invite you to their house. They just keep it short and simple. And okay, this is business. We'll finish this. We'll finish it up. All right, you have a good day. See you tomorrow. They're generally smart about it. The racism you're likely to find will be hidden, and they'll put it off on somebody else. I had one Jordanian one time come to me when I was going to stop teaching it was a second job I had. And when I was going to stop, I gave them advance notice. He asked if I could find a replacement, a white teacher. And I straight told him, I said he was a Jordanian guy, not a Saudi. I said to him, listen, you know me, you asked the wrong guy. Why would I go look specifically for a white guy for them to make this money? Why would I do that? Now, just because you said it, I'm going to only look for a black person to come and replace me, only black. And he said, well, it's not me, it's the students that asked. He was trying to, all the students were Saudi. All of them. I knew the students. I said to him, look, man, that's not true. The Saudi students are not saying we want a white teacher. 2 of the students in there are black, and others don't want to fight with them. No, three, I'm sorry, 3 of them were black, and others wouldn't want to fight them. They don't want to run that risk, sir. So who really said that? Now, he didn't say, he swore up and down it was the students, but in reality, it was his boss that was Syrian that said that. And that's why he was coming to me asking if I could find a white one. Well, the white teachers, there was a Canadian that wasn't going to take the job. A few white Americans that weren't even going to be there during that summer. They had already left because this is during the summer. So they were on vacation outside the kingdom. So, I think it was like maybe some white South Africans. Not only were they not in the kingdom at that time either, but they wouldn't have taken the job because they limit their exposure to all these non-black, all these non-white people throughout the day. They need the vacation. They can't sit up and they can't stand having black or brown people have authority over them. It bothers them enough in South Africa. They spend their vacations in Europe and Australia. Quiet as is kept. They don't always go back to South Africa for their vacation. So, and if I had sent one of those white guys, even if I gotten them hip to it, told them, look, there's this position available, you can take it, and they went and did it, they would have gotten themselves in trouble eventually. So, um, but again, it wasn't really, like I was saying, it wasn't the Saudis that were like that. The Saudi sees it like this: if your grandfather's first language was English, then your first language is English, so you're qualified to teach the language if you got the credentials and everything else. So they don't really get down like that, to be honest. The extent of the Saudi real bias is they don't want to marry black people, and they don't even want to marry their own that are too dark in many cases. Now, most of them don't really agree with this, but nobody really wants to be the first one to come out and say, no, that's BS. Those women are cute. They don't really want to do that. But when it comes to like dehumanizing dark-skinned people in general, black and otherwise, they're not really the ones that want to do that. It's not really them. Even the Jordanians don't think like that. It's like I said, their bias is national, but not racial. It's some of the Syrians that are like that, northern Egyptians who don't really like anybody, even each other. I don't know much about Libyans, to be honest. Algerians can be pretty revolutionary, actually. That's part of their culture, their history. Like they understand colonization, brainwashing, being woke, freeing your mind. They get that. So I can't put that on them either. Uh, Tunisians have that brainwashing. They don't, they do. They got the brainwashing to a certain extent. They're really highly educated, but they're not quite mentally free. I put it like that. Moroccans, they need to take a black militancy class. They need to. They need that, absolutely. The young Moroccans that grew up in France or the UK, they know the deal because they grew up in France or the UK. But you take like some of the older ones that grew up in Morocco, and they just they don't get it. They just don't quite get it. So no, Gulf Arabs just it's like they want to breed themselves to be lighter and paler, but there are too many black Gulf citizens for them to just feel comfortable dehumanizing us like that. It's they don't have a dehumanizing view of us anyway, to be honest.
Awesome, bro. So, brother, next question for you, brother, right, is in terms of culture. So, brother, is Saudi Arabia a conservative culture, or is it a liberal culture, brother, actually? Or is it a mixture of both, brother? And break it down as to why it's a conservative culture, if it is conservative, or it's a liberal culture, or it's right in the middle in 2024. Break it down for us, bro.
I would say that right now it's a transitional culture. So that's the best way I could describe it. It's transitional. It was far more conservative when I moved here 10 years ago, and even then, when I moved here, I was in one of the more conservative areas. Like Arar is quite conservative by comparison, and it was really conservative back then. Teenagers were bored out of their minds growing up in Arar. It was bad. Um, so I became aggressive living there for 3 years. I really did. They didn't have exposure. Like I said, they didn't even believe me when I told them about the racial bias in the United States until 2016. Then they got it. Uh, but in any case, um, these are the factors that kind of change it. Now, there are certain things that used to be the case, like you had religious police back in the day. You don't have that now. The religious police are not around. So it's up to the regular police to enforce whatever laws are on the books. And some laws are still there, but there's just no enforcement for them. Like it's illegal to live with a woman you're not related to and you're not married to her. Just go live with your girlfriend. That's not legal, but there's just not an enforcement. So I'm not saying it's legal. There's just not, they're not going around from house to house and checking. You see what I mean?
Mm.
And so if you go, like I've traveled with my wife, our marriage was not, it didn't take place in the kingdom. So when we check in and things like that, we can prove that we're married, but they don't really ask us because we're not Saudi. They ask us citizens. Citizens will have to prove they're married if they check into a hotel together. They can be asked to prove that. So there is enforcement when it comes to that per se. When that's hotels, but they're not going from house to house anymore, checking to see what's going on. They're not doing that. So another thing is that it is conservative amongst the elders. The elders are conservative. and it could be too conservative. So, like, let's say there's somebody whose parents weren't married when the kid was born. Well, the kid's not in trouble anyway, never was. But the elders will be like, don't even shake that person's hand. Like that, the kid did something wrong. That's how the elders are. They can go too far in that direction. The youngsters are pretty liberal. So you have the same generation gap that you would think you have in the West. It's not that you really have it there, but what you expect in the West, you actually do have here. The youngsters tend to be personally conservative, but they're liberal compared to their parents and grandparents. Parents and grandparents are quite conservative. So the laws are generally changing little by little, but so that's why the best way I could describe it is transitional. So
But brother,
yeah,
no, obviously, brother, keeping it encoded, please, and brother, keep it coded, please. But no rainbow stuff.
that is illegal. Now it's hard to prove it. It is hard to prove something like that. And if you're going to accuse someone, you need to have proof, because there's no punishment without a conviction without proof. But that is highly illegal. It is. Now, as a matter of fact, cheating on your spouse is illegal. That's against the law here. Again, that's a very difficult thing to prove. And a citizen told me that they changed the punishment. A citizen told me that it used to be, if they could prove it, that you're married and you cheated with someone else, you got stoned to death. It used to be that. It was hard to prove. Again, it took 4 witnesses. So almost nobody ever got convicted without confessing to it. But the punishment was stoning to death. Now, a citizen told me a long time ago, he told me this about 8 years ago, I think. He said that now the punishment is that you're divorced from the spouse on whom you cheated. You and the person you cheated with you're now married, and you can't divorce for 5 years. You're stuck with each other for 5 years. He said that was what the penalty was, but most people didn't know about it. I can't prove or disprove it because I've never cheated, so I've never gotten caught cheating. But that's what I heard. Now I can say that, when it comes to that rainbow stuff, if you promote it, you don't have to be proven to have done it. If you promote it, that's illegal. And we don't even know what the penalty is. Citizens don't know. People, if they promote it, they're gone, and nobody knows where they went. Nobody knows where they're being held. So the family won't even be able to visit somebody like that because they won't know which prison the person's being held at, and the prisoner won't know which prison they're being held at. So,
Awesome.
and that's if they're still alive.
Yo, Saudi, man. Hey, shout out to Saudi Arabia. Next question for you, brother, right, is so brother, next question for you, brother, is in terms of what's it called? I'm trying to get this question out. So, brother, okay, transitional, so conservative but becoming less conservative, but still having a core basic conservative foundation, which is great, brother. Shout out to Saudi Arabia for being a conservative nation. That's why I want to hear. Be conservative, preserve your culture. Conservatism is the way forward. All right. So shout out to Saudi Arabia for the conservatism. So, brother, the question for you, brother, is now lifestyle, brother. Okay. What kind of lifestyle would a passport bro be living there, brother, in Saudi Arabia? Would it be a high class lifestyle, brother? Or would it be a humble lifestyle, brother, in your opinion?
Passport bros are known about here, but you don't meet people here that identify themselves as passport bros. I mean, even I am SYSBM. If there's actually a passport bro, the way that they live would depend upon their skill. If they are in education, they could live well, but they probably would not identify themselves as passport bros again. To any of their current students. Former students, it doesn't really matter, but to your current students, you probably would not. That probably would not come up. If your students engage you in that sort of talk, they're trying to distract you from teaching the lesson. So, in terms of living a humble lifestyle, there aren't enough passport bros or self-identified passport bros here to say who's living or how many of them are living a humble lifestyle. But again, passport bros, assuming that they're going to be from the West, they have to have a skill to get here anyway, because this place, nobody here will hire you. Even if you're coming trying to look for a menial labor job, like just working at McDonald's, you couldn't even get that job here. That's not for you. They're going to say, nope, that's for people who come from countries whose economies are busted. You got to give them a chance. They don't view it as they're lower, they only deserve it. They see it as give them a chance because their countries are developing. So let them have that particular chance. That's the way they view it, actually. So you really wouldn't see them. You really wouldn't see them. Honestly, it's hard to say because you don't see people calling themselves passport bros inside of the country. The way that if you are in fact a Western man and passport bro, the way that you're going to live here is you're going to live either you're single, and whatever you do with women, we wouldn't know about it. You don't tell anybody. If you do get down with them in the compound or wherever else, you don't say it. You don't say it out loud. Or you live a married life. I would say this though. Let's say you want to go the married route because that's legal. There's no law against getting married here. If you are a Western passport bro and you come here single, what I would say is look at the Filipinas, because there are Christians and there are Muslims. There are Protestants and Catholics. So whichever your belief system is, you can marry someone that has the same belief system. And as we know, generally speaking, if you're nice to a Filipino wife, she's nice to you, she'll spoil you, whether she works or not. When she's at home with you, she'll spoil you. Just appreciate it, do the same for her, and take care of her like a husband is supposed to. This is known. So I could tell you the best way for them, and that's probably the way that they're going to go anyway without me saying anything. But if you're a passport broke and you're not here yet and you might wind up here, that's what you would do. Because if you're Muslim, then you look for a southern Filipina from Mindanao, from that province. That's what the Muslims are. And you can meet them. I think quite a few of them are actually nurses. So you could wind up meeting them. And then not only that, but you actually have quite a few who are Catholic when they arrive and they become Muslim when they're in the kingdom. So you could meet them and discuss marriage with them and marry the one that likes you and you like her. So that's the best way really to go about it. If you're just looking to date, you probably want to do that outside of the peninsula.
Brother, we'll get to brother. We'll get to brother. That was lifestyle. I appreciate you, bro. So, brother, still on the lifestyle question, brother. How do the how does the average Saudi live in Saudi Arabia, brother, lifestyle wise, brother?
The average Saudi lives with his or her family. The average Saudi does not live alone at any stage in their life. Some of them might live alone. Some men may live alone. Women almost never do. Women pretty much don't live alone. They live with somebody they're related to or married to. But the average man may live alone for a short time if they go to university away from their hometown. They might rent one of these cheap apartments, not furnished, and just get some really cheap furniture. Maybe even just a mattress. Forget just a mattress. Hang their clothes up. Some cushions where they can sit. The TV, the basics. We know while they're at university. So the average male, if they do live alone, it's going to be because they're in university away from their hometown, or they're training with the police or the military or the Coast Guard. And so they might live alone during that time. And there are places they can rent out that are cheap by the month to do that for that particular time. Most of the time, they almost always wind up going back to their home city and they live with the family again, or they start their own family wherever they wind up living, and then they live with that family. But the best way to describe it is that they almost never just, you don't have somebody just living alone permanently. That's not their lifestyle. They don't do that. Living alone in perpetuity is not something that the Saudi plans on doing. So that's the best way to describe it. You don't really have a lot of slums here, and if you do, it's not for the Saudis. And it's not because they're rich. Like I said, it's just they don't live isolated. That's one thing. Saudis don't live isolated from each other. So the poverty, when they do come across poverty, it doesn't sting. And also they have access to healthcare. For them, healthcare is free, and education is free. Not all of it. There are private education options, but they have the option of getting public education. It's not that great, but it is free. So for them, healthcare and education are not going to put them in debt. So the poverty that they do face won't really sting them. And it doesn't cost much to keep your clothes clean. So when they're out and about, you don't really even know that they're poor until you really get to know them. Same with them being
Awesome.
rich.
So, brother, language. So, brother, is English enough to speak out there in Saudi Arabia, or do we have to learn Arabic?
In a big city, English and a bit of Arabic are enough. In a larger city, in as a matter of fact, in the Eastern province is where education is strong, even outside of the cities. So there, it's kind of about the same. Uh, in medium, medium and small size cities, you're going to have to learn Arabic to actually get around with a lot of people. Otherwise, you find yourself in situations where you can't explain what you really need to explain. Because while English is becoming more and more widespread, in medium-sized cities, I would say it's in the middle. But in small towns and villages, if you're going to be there, you are going to need Arabic. There will be people who think they speak English until they meet you and you actually speak it, and it is jacked up. So that does exist. There are people that think they speak it because they read it in books and all that. Then, a foreigner comes to town and speaks English, comes into the village. You're talking to them, they're talking to you, and what they're saying is English words, but the sentence doesn't match up. So yeah, when you're in a small town, and I started off in one. I started in a small town. They had an airport, but not much else. That was Arar. And Arar, when I was there, definitely you needed Arabic, because you had bilingual people that were educated. They usually weren't from Arar, but you had people there highly educated and they were bilingual. But what happened was that the uneducated locals wanted you to become a Bedouin like them, so they would keep you away from them. I'm not joking. So the engineers, they you could tell them, hey, they could see you and say, where you walking to? They offer you rides. That's very nice. But you say, I'm going to this guy's house. Well, who is that? Oh, that's an engineer. Oh, yeah, well, get in the car. I'll take you. They won't take you to his house. They take you to their own house because they didn't want you getting around the engineer, because the engineer wasn't going to make a Bedouin out of you. And that's what they were trying to do. So, yeah, if you're going to, once you're in them small towns, you need Arabic. Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome.
But big cities, just the basics is enough.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. So, brother, tell us more about the weather, brother, in Saudi Arabia. Is it hot all year round? Does it get cold? And how do we prepare for the weather, brother, in your opinion?
In the South, it doesn't get hot in the South, except maybe a few days out the year. Summers are warm, winters could be pretty cold in the South. Summers actually can have some cool days and cool nights. That's in the South because of the mountains. In the middle of the country, like the Central Belt, and that's where you got Dammam, Riyadh, Jeddah, and Mecca. Going across there, the winters are actually pretty nice. You might actually get rain. It's beginning to rain more now in Saudi Arabia than what it used to during the winter and spring months. So to tell the truth, the climate's really changing. You get more green now. And I actually have a video up on my channel about that. You got more rain falling outside of the summer. And so you got Jeddah, Mecca, Medina, and the area in between. You got green showing up on the hills now. The hills and mountains are turning green. Some of the countryside is getting these patches of green grass growing because of the rain that's increased. But yeah, in the summers are hot. They're hot, really hot and dry. And on the coastlines, they're hot and they're humid. And I can't say which coast, but I live on one of the coasts right now, and it's going to get muggy. They said about 2 months from now, that's when the humidity is going to really start. That'll be, yeah, we're in April. So yeah, they say that June, the humidity will get in the middle. By the end of June, going into September, the humidity is just going to be bad, really hot, and really humid. That's what they say.
Awesome.
So in the north, I would say this: if you don't want to live in the north, if you can help it, There's a city called Hyle, and I know Hyle's weather pretty good because I've been there at different times of the year. Hyle's winters are not too cold, and the summers are hot, but you can go outside. People actually will go and stay in Hyle sometimes for the summer. If they don't go to the south where it's a bit more expensive, then they'll go to Hyle because it's elevated and they can deal with the summers there. Another city is Riyadh. I've been there during the summer, and again, you can go outside. It's hot, but you can go outside. It's on the border with Jordan. But most of the north is just it's cold in the winter and not freezing, but it's cold, especially at night. And then it's just nasty hot in the summer, and you can't go outside. You can't do it. And Medina, believe it or not, Medina is actually worse than Mecca, even though it's further north. In the summer, Medina, like Maine, it's so hot. If you go outside, you could faint.
Wow. Awesome breakdown, brother. So next question for you, bro, is now, brother. So, brother, we're IT bros. I'm an IT bro. Other brothers are. Is Saudi Arabia a good spot for IT bros from what you know? If you don't know anything, brother, it's no problem at all, brother.
I don't know how good it is. I know a few spots that can be pretty good. I don't hear about it being a hub of IT, but I know that people need those skills. I think that what they're trying to do though is they're largely trying to use people from India and then trying to train people that are locals to do more of the IT stuff. So if you're going to teach IT, I don't know what I'm not really sure what the opportunities are like to teach it. But if you do teach it, I think if you get a gig teaching it, you could do pretty well. Now, I don't know as much about IT as you do, but I could say I did notice that in the Eastern province, they've got a few Filipinos that are doing IT work as well. So you don't have to be a citizen to do your work in IT, but I think they're trying to phase into that. That's one of the things it's one of the fields they're really trying to Saudize under the process of Saudization. If you would do remote work though, and you've got a passport that they will allow to come and visit here, then yeah, you can come and spend a good bit of time here and do the remote work. Especially especially in the winter months when it's not quite as hot, and if you know someone that's living here and working here, and you can come in and visit them, then yeah, you could do some remote work while you're spending time here. Only thing is this: if you're doing remote work and you're not technically living here to work, just remember you can't get a driver's license, so you have to bring an international license. You can't. I don't know if you can rent a car or not. I'm not sure with an international license. You can't get a local bank account though. You cannot get one of those, and you can get one phone line. So you're going to be using the same SIM card for your internet, because you can't get two SIM cards, one for internet, the other for voice. So you're going to be using somebody else's internet a lot, or you're going to buy an expensive package. And if somebody makes a phone call to you while you're using the internet, it's going to turn the internet off.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
Keep that in mind.
So next question for you, brother, right? So brother, what's your favorite cities, brother, in Saudi Arabia, and tell us why? Maybe rank it from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, and why you've ranked it that way, brother.
I guess what I do is I give you the first. Yeah, I guess I'll give you the 4. Okay, I like of course I like Medina and Mecca. So I'm going to count them as 1 because you got a high speed rail that goes between them. So I'll just, for practical purposes, I count them as 1. Yanbu and Jeddah are I'd say second and third. They're developed. As a matter of fact, Yanbu is it's actually run, it's designed and run largely like a U.S. city is. So yeah, I would say Yanbu and Jeddah are. Another one I like is Khobar. I went through there recently, spent some time there on my way to Bahrain. My wife and I both liked it, both. So I would probably rate that. Yeah, I say I'd rate that one the fourth. Um, Riyadh, the only thing I liked about Riyadh was that it was easy for me to meet some black folk, but the same thing is true in Jeddah, in Medina and Mecca. Now, I didn't see a whole lot of black folks in Yanbu, unfortunately. So that's one reason why I like Jeddah a little bit more. I mean, Jeddah's really crowded and big. Um, so you relax less than you would in a place like Yanbu, but you're gonna find some black folk there, all nationalities, Saudi and otherwise. You'll find black folk and they're citizens and they speak Hausa. They're citizens of here, and they'll be walking up down the street and they're speaking Hausa to each other. Some of them might speak Fulani to each other. And if they see you, they're gonna give you the head nod. Now they were a little shy of me. I could barely get directions out of them, but yeah, they. So I would say it in that order for that reason. If I had more experience with Khobar, I might change the order of the list. But based on what I know so far, yeah, I wouldn't tell anybody to go to Riyadh because Riyadh is really big. It's really crowded. The traffic is bad all the time. The airport is far away from a lot of stuff. You got two different train stations, so you might have to transfer between the two train stations if you're traveling throughout the country. So yeah, Riyadh is just if it hadn't been for a local rapper, BD and another guy, Mr. Hausawi, I wouldn't have been able to really enjoy it. They made it enjoyable for me, but I wouldn't be trying to drive around in Riyadh that much. I wouldn't do it. It's just everything is hectic. You got options, but it's hard to get to them. Everything's hectic. You can get the same development in smaller cities. So yeah, if you want to, I would say like maybe living and working, probably Jeddah, and then relaxing, Yanbu. For the most part, I don't know Jazan. I've heard about it. I just never visited it. I want to find that out, and then I'll let you know afterwards.
Brother, what about Durham? Bahrain.
Oh, okay, Bahrain.
Yeah, no, Bahrain. I know there's a place. It starts with D, in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. Yeah, Bahrain. That's it. I think Bahrain, brother. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, yeah, yes, actually pronounced Dhahran. Yeah, I know what you mean now. Dhahran, Dammam, and Khobar are three cities next to each other, and they're across they're next to the country of Bahrain. We went through there. My wife and I went through there when we went to Bahrain for the comedy show. I remember we visited there in 2020, the summer of 2020, when people couldn't really travel internationally, but you could travel domestically during that summer. It was a little difficult. You had to go you had a lot of sterilization going on, but you could travel domestically during that summer. So we did come into that area.
How is it?
Yeah, we went.
Is it good? Is it
It
bad?
was Dammam it looked really, the part I was in, Dammam looked old, so I wasn't really that impressed with it. But right next to Dammam, you got Khobar and Dhahran. They were nice. Dhahran Mall is a pretty nice mall. That was where I had the Popeyes, actually. That was the first time I had Popeyes inside the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And it was good. I mean, I'm from the Gulf Coast of the U.S. I spent a lot of time in New Orleans as a kid. Popeyes is throughout the South in general, but especially along the Gulf Coast. So when I had it, I said, man, this is great. And as a matter of fact, if anybody's in the Dhahran area, you can go to the Dhahran Mall, and there's a Popeyes in there too. I remember it, and I went there. I know it's still there because we stopped there, and I got some Popeyes on the way to Bahrain. But yeah, those two, Khobar and Dhahran, they're new and they're well kept. So yeah, they're pretty nice places to visit. And the thing is, they're cities. They really are cities, but because it's two cities, they're kind of spread out. So it's not like Riyadh where you just got all these people on top of each other and nonstop, non-moving traffic. It's not like that. You can still move around, so you got stuff to do, and then you can still relax. So yeah, those two areas those two cities next to each other, yeah, they're pretty good. They don't have the same entertainment options as Riyadh, but what they do have is easy to get to. And then, of course, like I said, Bahrain's across the bridge, so People can go to Bahrain for stuff like a reggae festival that they're going to have soon, I think, comedy shows, things like that. So if you find that you're bored there, you go to Bahrain and you got all kinds of options there too.
Awesome, brother. So, brother, what about black barbers? Is that over there in Saudi Arabia? If so, which cities do they mostly congregate the black barbers? If that's possible.
Well, I'll tell you this: in general, for us, most of the barbers are okay no matter where they're from. But if you wanted to find the most black barbers, you would probably want to go to Jeddah. Muslims can go into Mecca and Medina as well. Anyone can go into Jeddah, and you'll find quite a few black barbers, different nationalities. I'm sure you'll find quite a few there. Riyadh, we have there's some neighborhoods that are mostly black in Riyadh. One is called Hala, and another one is called Jaradiya. So in those areas, because they're black areas, you'll find black barbershops too. That's if you're going to be in Riyadh. I'm not telling people to go, but if you're going to be there, those are our neighborhoods, and you'll find the barbers there. And I'll tell you what a backup plan is if you don't find specifically black barbers where you are. Filipino barbers, actually, they are they're very similar to us in a lot of ways, believe it or not. I'm not saying they're identical, but they're actually quite like us in several ways. And I mean, they got some pretty good barbers too. I had to take my son to a Filipino barber when he came here. He went weeks without a haircut when he was in the other country where he was going to talk to his fiance's family. But when he came here, I said, boy, you cannot just be going shaggy like this, man. First full night here, I took him to a barber shop. I took him to this old neighborhood, and I found the Filipino barber shop. Now, they were a little more expensive than I expected, but they gave him a good fade. They faded him up nice. And I think they were glad to do it. And also sometimes Indian barbers here, pretty good. But I would go to a Filipino, even though they charge more. I would go to them first anyway. But yeah, they faded my son up nice. And some of these Filipinos out here, especially if they're from the South, they really have a liking for black folks. Sometimes they'll try to be us. So you meet a Southern Filipino and you like their cut, you ask them where they go, and they'll take you to the best barber.
Amazing.
If you don't
amazing,
find a
brother.
black one.
So, brother, I read some stats that overall, Saudi Arabia, so there's more foreigners living in Saudi Arabia than actual Saudi people themselves. But obviously, but all those foreigners there, but are expats, right? But despite that, right, is Western culture from the expats taking over Saudi Arabia, or whether Saudi Arabia is still Saudi, even though there's millions of expats there, it is still strongly Islamic Saudi. They run the country. Their culture is more powerful than any culture, and if you step out of line, you will be dealt with. Is that the case, brother?
Well, it's true. If you break the law, you will get dealt with according to whatever the prescribed penalty is from beforehand. They don't generally make many exceptions unless unless they're sure you just made an honest mistake. They don't generally make many exceptions, no matter who you are. That is generally the case. Now, let's say, like for instance, if you smuggle drugs, that's a death penalty. They catch you with it, you'll get a trial, but once you're convicted, they're gonna cut your head clean off, no matter who you are. If your friend is the king, chop chop. They don't play around about that, and it's the same with murder. If you commit murder, the family could choose to forgive you, or they could take blood money. They can choose to do it, but if they don't accept either of those two options, chop chop. Unless, of course, nobody can prove that you did it. Now, I mean, if there's no evidence, there's no evidence. But if there's evidence or proof, yeah, you're gonna catch it regardless of your passport and your citizenship. They don't mess around about these things. The more that the crime involves the rights of somebody else, the stricter they are about it. So now, in terms of the culture, the truth is that it's not really more foreigners than you find citizens. That's not really the case. It's the UAE and I think Qatar that has that. I think that's where the foreigners outnumber the citizens. And I've been to the USA. I'm not sorry. I've been to the UAE about twice, and it's true. You don't meet a whole lot of Emiratis there. I mean, my brother-in-law, he is a citizen. He's a Black Emirati, so I could meet him through him. But just walking around, a lot of times you will not you won't come across a whole lot of them. Um, and I haven't been to Qatar, but they told me that that was the case in Qatar as well. So in Bahrain, it seemed to me like it was about what and what, just walking around. I don't really know, but I know that the foreigners don't outnumber the citizens. But in Bahrain, you have a lot of citizens whose origins are foreign, so you can see a lot of citizens that you don't know are citizens unless you get to know them. So that's the other thing. So in Saudi, no, the citizens still outnumber everybody else. There is a cultural shift, and it's coming with the good and the bad, of course. There is a cultural shift, but a lot of that shift is actually coming from the citizens themselves. They learn things from foreigners, but they don't let foreigners dictate to them what to do and what not to do. They're pretty good about that. They don't let you dictate to them. Um, give you an example. Um, when it comes to things like academic honesty, it was a big problem here when I got here. 90% of students cheated, and they would tell you 90% cheated, but none of them would admit to being that 90%. They all told you they're that 10%. Well, the government got sick of it, and that's because it was bad for infrastructure. If they're trying to Saudize the job market and all of their people are cheating to get through school, well, of course, that's a bad look. So they had to crack, the government began to crack down. The Saudis began to crack down on this against their own teenagers. The foreigners were the ones that were letting it go because, and I mean specific foreigners, like I said, Jordanians and Egyptians, because they don't like Saudis, to be honest with you. So they would let them cheat because they don't like them. They didn't want them to develop. And teenagers didn't mind because they were allowed to cheat. But the government began to change that and crack down. And what happened is that a lot of, especially with COVID, a lot of the good students became stronger and more organized. And they were no longer intimidated by the bad students. So eventually they were not even outnumbered. And so that shift happened, and that was something that they were willing to learn from others, but they took care of that shift themselves. Now, if a student cheats, good students that are honest will rat that student out. They will say, when we saw him do it, don't let that little BASTARD get the same grade as the rest of us because he didn't earn it. He was asking us for answers or copying off us. We saw him do it. Give him a 0. We'll sign, and they'll sign witness statements and snitch and dare him to do something about it. And I know because it happened in my class in 2022, and I was shocked. It was 2 that snitched, but then the rest of the class got behind the ones that snitched, and they said this turd shouldn't have been in class with us. He didn't learn anything in the other classes. He cheated. He got all the way here. Take it away from him. Don't let him graduate at this point. So they took care of that themselves. They didn't really, all they needed me to do was inform my boss. They didn't really need much from me or any help. And my boss was a Jordanian. He would have covered it up, but they went over his head to the Saudi that was the dean of the department, and they told him, and he called all us in the office and made sure that guy got this penalty and failed. So they do make changes, I will say, but they control the changes they make. They make them on their own terms. All the most they're willing to do is learn from other people, and that's it. You can't come in and tell them that. If you come in and you tell them to do certain things, they'll probably stop and slow down and not do it. Awesome, so bro. They like to take initiatives themselves.
Awesome, bro. So, Mr. Black Mind, brother, in terms of, I heard that they take your passport when you arrive in Saudi Arabia. Did that happen to you, or is that false?
They do it with maids, maybe with their drivers. It's illegal though. The Supreme Court ruled in 2012 that you're not allowed to take passports because the passport is the property of the issuing government in the trust of the passport holder. So the Supreme Court said, no, it's actually not legal to confiscate the passports, unless, of course, they're convicted of a crime or something like that. Yeah, you take it away then. But like just because they're coming into work, no, you don't do that. So it's actually illegal to do. Some families do it because they think they'll get away with it. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, well, we're going to put all passports in a particular place. Sometimes they'll do that. They'll say we'll put all the passports in one area. but they don't lock them away. But that's if somebody gets a passport held, usually it's going to be a maid or a driver. Um, they did take passports or hold passports for some teachers that came from countries like Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, some of those countries. They would do that. Pakistan and India, they would hold their passports, but like I said, it was illegal. And um, some Sudanese guy was actually about to beat up one of the former bosses I had in my old city because his passport was held. And he said, look, when I get ready to travel during the vacation, as long as that passport is here in my hand on time for me to catch the flight, I won't trip. It wasn't. So he got ready to fight the Syrian that was holding his passport. It wasn't a Saudi. It was a Syrian guy holding it, and he didn't give it in time. So the Sudanese guy came to fight him, and they had to break them up. And the Syrian guy went and got the passport and gave it to him. So now they pretty much stopped doing that across the board. Because if they hold your passport and they cause you any trouble, all you need is a witness that you didn't have the passport, and you sue them. And if you got witnesses and evidence, you win the lawsuit, and they got to pay. If citizens aren't the ones that are doing that, actually, except like I said, a case of maybe maids and drivers. Now, for Americans and Britishers and South Africans, they didn't do that. The whole time I've been here, they have not done that. They have not held the passports. We wouldn't allow them to do it, and they wouldn't dare ask in many cases, black or white. They don't try to hold your passport.
Awesome, bro.
They don't want
awesome.
those problems with the U.S. embassy or the U.K. embassy. That's one thing they don't want, because, like I said, it is illegal. So they don't want to come across embassies like that.
So, brother, if a bro was to go to Saudi Arabia, right, for work or as a passport or whatever, he's protected because he's a UK national, he's a US national. So it's basically the US have you. So basically, let's say, brother, right? So the US will have you on a database that black man is over here, he's our citizen. Anything happens to him, or if he complains to us about something, Saudis get scared. Is that the case, brother?
Well, the truth is that the U.S. and the U.K. embassy don't really get involved in a lot of civil and domestic matters, but the citizens don't know where these embassies draw the line. However, confiscating a passport without an investigation and a trial for a crime, that is a serious thing. So if you're saying to them, look, they confiscated my passport, well, then yeah, they could that's when they're likely to get involved, because the passport belongs to the government and it was issued to you. So they'll be like, well, we didn't give you the passport, we gave it to the citizen over here. So, and it's against our laws and your laws for you to take it, give it back. And so I don't know how much they can actually do, but the citizens don't really want that kind of attention. I'll be honest. They don't want that. And they really don't. Really what it is that they don't want their own government being upset with them for getting that kind of attention from a foreign embassy. And legitimately, the foreign embassy had a right to intervene. So I'm not saying that like they protect you just from any and everything at all. If you break the law, you break the law. You're going to pay according to the law of the land that you broke. But if it comes to a passport confiscation, yeah, I don't think they want that kind of attention, because frankly, if they, like I said, it's illegal to take it. So if the embassy has to say something about so-and-so confiscating the passport, the Saudi citizen knows that at this point, his own government could come to him and say, like, that he could be getting a knock on his door from some Saudi detectives. Are you taking passports illegally? We might do that if they're wanted for a crime, but what do what you got to say about that passport? What business is it of yours? Are you a cop? You charging them with something? So they don't want that, because again, if they embarrass the government, it's organized, it is a system, but they don't necessarily want to wind up locked behind bars and they can't even like say where they're locked up at. They don't want that. So they would rather not do it. When passports have been confiscated, like from teachers, it's usually been teachers that come from countries where the economies were weak, and the confiscators themselves were Egyptians or Jordanians or Syrian bosses and managers and things like that. Like I said, citizens weren't doing that to teachers. No, if a citizen did it, it was only maids, drivers, people they really had almost absolute control over, and that's if the government didn't know about it.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. So, brother, we are 3 hours, brother. We've not even touched upon the woman part, brother, but it's been an interesting stream, brother. So, I'm going to put it up to you. Do you want to carry on for, I don't know, half an hour more or whatever? Or do you want to do a second stream, brother, in the future about the woman part? Entirely up to you, brother, because we are at 3 hours and we did agree on 3 hours, and I want to be respectful of your time, bro.
Well, you have been respectful, and I really do appreciate that. I'll tell you what. How many likes do you see on your screen?
Let me see, bro. So I see, brother, I see. So I refresh my page, but I see 119 likes.
Okay, cool. And it's 119 watching. So since they gave you the likes, then I'm going to go ahead and continue on. We can knock this out in one stream. I mean, usually people tend to tune out after 2 hours, but they can catch the replay. And I think it's better for you and for the audience. And since they supported you, I'll be glad to do this and answer your questions and help them. Hopefully, inshallah, to help my audience too. I'm trying to benefit both of our audiences here.
Okay,
So yeah,
brother,
go ahead and ask whatever you want to know about the women, and I'll tell you whatever I know if I know the answer.
oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So, I got a super chat here. Hold on, brother. Let me just read it out real quick.
Yes,
Brothers,
sir.
shout out to Mr. Romarian for the super chat. I appreciate you, brother. Romarian Gabriel. Hello, support from France. Thank you for the support, brother. Much appreciate, brother. Shout out to France watching the channel. Salute to y'all, man. Brothers, get the support up. Super chats, PayPal, and of course, hit the like button. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, brother, how long do you want to go on for? Is that another half an hour, another hour? Up to you, brother.
Yeah, let's say we can make it another 40 minutes,
Okay.
depending on the questions you have about the women and any super chatters questions about the women.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. So, brother, I'm going to ask you a very important question, brother. Okay. And,
Yes,
bro,
sir.
this question is probably the most important question in the history of mankind. Okay, bro? This
Yes, sir.
question here, brother, is so powerful and pure. It can turn water into wine and vice versa. Okay. Brother, a question so pure, brother. It can make mankind walk on water like Christ did in the Bible, brother. Okay. A question
Okay.
so powerful, brother. Okay. It can block a meteorite from destroying planet Earth. But a question so so seismic, it can cause earthquakes and tsunamis, bro. Okay. This question is, bro, are Saudi Arabian women checking heavy for black men in Saudi Arabia, bro?
Um, the answer is that I don't know how many of them are, but there are enough of them. If you look at the population of brothers that are here, there are enough of them checking in relation to the population of brothers. Yes, Saudi Arabian women are showing interest in brothers. Uh, it's like this: if someone's not interested, then she shuts up and she does not shame another woman for being interested. But the ones that are feel perfectly comfortable showing their interest in certain contexts, certain arrangements. They're checking generally for brothers that are in decent shape or muscular with close haircuts or bald heads. They're checking for those brothers, like the bodyguard look. That yeah, they are. Like I said, the lady that stopped my man when I was in the car with him and asked if her lips were beautiful was not a black Saudi woman. If she was, we didn't know. Um, there was I've been to a pizza place with Mr. Hausawi, and a lady seemed to be pretty nice and friendly, even towards me, and I was shocked because I'm not the one that's recognizable. But this was in Riyadh, where the English is pretty good. So when I spoke, I think she realized that both of us were black, and I was a foreign black man. Uh, yes, they do check. When I started my job, my last job that I had in Riyadh, I was teaching, training some people to work in tourism. And one floor above us, there were some other trainees for another program. One of them was a brother. He was, matter of fact, he was a Hausawi, meaning Hausa. He was a Saudi citizen. He saw me. He said, "Say, bro, where you from?" Just like that. Well, he started with Salam Alaikum. Then he said, "Where you from?" And I told him the state that I'm from, um, and he asked, I think we got into a conversation about race because he knew I was a Black American when he heard me speaking. And he said, well, what about originally? Where you from? Like for me, I'm a Saudi citizen, but my people are from Nigeria. And I told him, well, you know what, man? My mother's folks, I know they're from Gambia, Senegal, and Mali. And I gave him even the tribes. And I said, told him my dad could be from the Congo, Angola, or any combination in between. So yeah, we share ancestry, man. And so we chopped it up. Well, the thing is, when I saw him the first time, before we spoke, I saw him. I got off the elevator. I saw him. He was talking, and you had 4 non-Black Saudi women sitting around him, giggling, chatting with him. He was polite. He smiled a little bit. He wasn't like sweating them or anything. He was being polite, and they must have said something funny because he was laughing at something. But it was 4 of them trying to get his attention, just casually. And he was tall, slender. So he was in, I'd say, good shape, even though he smokes. Yeah, they were checking for him, checking for my friend, Mr. Housawi, checking for B Deep, my other friend in Riyadh. He told, let's see, B Deep told me that he saw some of them looking at me, but that would be when I wasn't looking in that direction. So sometimes they even check for me, and I'm not recognizable like that, except in speech. So that does happen. My Nigerian friends were telling me that they were getting stares specifically from women and not from men, and that's when they noticed. They expected to be stared at for not being from there because where they live is not that big a city. It's a medium-sized city where I used to live, where I was just visiting. They expected in general people to look because they weren't from Saudi, but they started to notice it was specifically women looking at them and looking at them up and down. And they weren't even hiding it per se. And that was what shocked them. So they asked me what was going on because I'd been in that city longer. And I straight told them, man, I don't get stared at like that. I don't know. I mean, I get stared at when I'm out with my wife because they think we're a mixed couple. But I don't know why they checking. Were y'all with your wives or what? So, they straight one of them actually found out what it was. I don't know who told them, but one of them found out. They were checking these men and trying to see if they had mule appendages, if you will. Certain appendages for which Jamaicans are stereotyped, if you catch my drift.
What the flip? Whoa.
Yeah, that's yup. So they heard the stereotype. They have heard the stereotype, yes. And dirty movies apparently are known about here. It's not something they don't know about. Now, I'm sure they're blocked legally, but apparently somebody can access them because it's known about. And so, of course, the actors, as you already know, the actors pretty much have to have something extraordinary to be an actor. Either, they're Energizer bunnies or extra equipped or both, whatever the case is. So before I became Muslim, I remember that you had to be extraordinary to be a male actor. So I can't imagine what it is now at this point. But the stereotypes are out. It was my non-Black play nephew that told me about that. He said, yes, they're checking for bras. And he told me that in Riyadh, some of the local women, because maybe they just never find a husband, sometimes they might pick a foreign man that doesn't have the power to say something. They may say, listen, go into this alley, don't say anything, give me what I want, and if you keep quiet, everything will be all right. And they don't, if the men run off screaming, then she's going to scream to get the man in trouble. So, they pick men that they know they could get away with doing this to.
But they would never dare do that to a UK, US brother or Canadian or Australian, right? Because we have a lot of power there, and our words are powerful.
Well, yeah, they would rather not do that again. It's not that the police would treat you differently. They'll try to follow the evidence, but what it is that they don't. The ladies don't want to get in trouble with their own government for bringing the kind of attention from those embassies. The difference is that those embassies, they'll at least tell you what your rights are. At least you can tell those embassies, hey, listen, I've been arrested. Just tell me what my rights are. They don't try to spring you from, but they at least say, well, you know what? Here's a list of lawyers. We'll let your family know you're in this. At least that, right? These other nations' embassies probably won't even do that. You see what I mean? So it's more so. It's not that It's not really that they see your nationality as really truly better than the others, maybe richer. They do have some nationalism here like that, but when it comes to crime and the system, it's more so about how your embassy is going to respond, and about how the other embassy. So, if they do this to a dude from Pakistan, his embassy's probably just not going to do much about it anyway if he gets arrested. Whereas your embassy at least would at least give you the names of some good lawyers they trust, and the lawyers could probably do some things for you. So yeah, it's sometimes they do that. This is a rare thing, but in Riyadh they know what happens. It may happen. I mean, you may have 20 cases like this a year that we don't know about, but people know that it exists. So I'm not saying it's really common. It's just it's commonly known about. It's like that. So yeah, when you have these women that are frustrated like that, it used to be that nobody really wanted a foreign man to have contact with a Saudi woman, and in some villages they still are like that. I mean, they took care to make sure that I didn't marry in Arar when I was there. They took care to make sure I didn't marry a citizen. Not that I was trying to, but they did that. It was like that. Now people are less involved in that kind of thing, but when it comes down to like brothers, they don't really do the whole harassing thing. They don't really necessarily do that, but they do flirt with brothers. Sometimes they do things like open an abaya to try to give a brother a peek or something like that. Actually, man, a lot of brothers don't really like that type of treatment because these ladies still ain't trying to marry you. I mean, sometimes they do want to marry you, but they're not trying to clear that with their family, you see. And so so some brothers will be like, well, I mean, yeah, they like us, and that's a compliment involved, but the way they're going about it is wrong. So brothers ain't just sitting up like, oh yeah, she like me, I'm gonna try to get at her. It's more like, well, she's going about it the wrong way. So a lot of times brothers don't really like the way that they're going about it, but yeah, they do be checking. Black Saudis they're estimated to be about 10% of the population. So it's not that every Saudi woman is looking for a black man, but the ones that are, it's enough of them to where most brothers will see some women checking for them or flirting with them. A friend of mine works at it's actually an American owned, an American chain. A friend of mine works at one of those. It's one of those furniture stores that you have in a lot of malls, even in the US. But some of the Saudi ladies that are not married, they'll do things like at a business meeting, even with other people around. They might do things like pat him on his back and say, oh, mashallah, you made this many sales. Well, they can congratulate him. Sure, they work together. But are they supposed to put their hand on his shoulder and pat his back? They're not supposed to do that. So they'll do stuff like that. They know that's beyond the bounds, you see. And he straight up said he doesn't mind them congratulating him, but why don't they keep their hands off of him? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, he goes through that. I've asked some other brothers, and they said, these chicks check for us.
Did he complain to the management or HR that she did that, and they sorted it
out? No, if he were to complain, the company probably would not say much about it. They would probably say, well, go to the police then and sue her or something like that. They might do something along those lines. Now, of course, if it's a guy that does this to a lady, it's seen as a bit more egregious, even though legally it's the same. Culturally, it would still seem a bit more egregious. But yeah, he didn't go to the company about it because some guys have said that even though some men here have said that if they do get harassed by women, it's illegal, but it takes more to prove it. Like a woman can say somebody harassed her and he's got to prove he didn't. But if he says that she harassed him, he still has to prove that she did. If he can, she's in trouble. But it's hard to prove. And they're really going to look for it because people are still more apt to believe that the guy's guilty and the woman's innocent. And so, yeah, so he's still stuck in that. He has to live in that environment. Yeah, he still has to. So he doesn't have much that he can do in the way of the complaint, even though they'll do this stuff in meetings and they're witnesses. The witnesses may say, well, she didn't make any illegal suggestions. She just put her hands on him. on his shoulder or something. You see, the witnesses might say something like that, and she gets off.
Okay. Awesome, bro. Awesome. Brother, you know, what about male on male harassment, bro? Um, have you ever heard any stories about that, brother, in Saudi?
Yeah, I have. I have heard about that. And as a matter of fact, I do know a black Saudi man uh, who had that happen when he was an adult. He told me the story, and I thought he was a kid at the time it happened. I said, "Well, what did your parents say?" He said, "I never told them." And I asked, "Well, oh, were you grown at this time?" And he nodded his head. Yeah, he was grown. But yeah, it was non-black Saudi that called him over and spoke to him. And like I said, people here are friendly, so you can introduce yourself to folks sometimes just to see if you know any of the same people. So this guy got his name and said, "Oh yeah, I know some of your folks," and then he felt up on him.
What the
And he said, and so brother man said, "What the f you doing?" Swatted his hand away, and dude said, "Please don't trip, sit still, like please sit still." And so he was this was an adult man that did this. Now again, this is highly illegal. But if a man does harass another man, they're not going to do it in front of witnesses because, again, that's that is highly illegal and it's embarrassing. So it does happen, it exists, but it's one of those things. Again, it pretty much to get a conviction for anything here, you do need evidence or proof or witnesses or something like that. You do need it, but it's known to exist. Nobody's dared harass me. Um, Not only because, and to be honest, it's not just the embassy here. It's not really about that. People don't want that attention. But what I've told people before is that if I'm ever treated unfairly, that there are a bunch of citizens from here that live in my home state. And then if I'm here, I'm not in a position to protect those citizens that live in my home state that are studying, the Saudi citizens, I mean. I framed it that way. Like if I get in trouble here, I can't go back to my home state and protect the citizens from my people that would retaliate. That's how the way I frame things. So nobody's even thought of harassing me that I know of. Not a dude. I mean, no dude has ever thought of that. Hell, no woman has actually outright harassed me. I've been flirted with inappropriately, but no woman's outright harassed me and been like, "Listen, we're gonna go over here. We're gonna go in that closet. You ain't gonna say nothing." No woman's ever done that in my case. Um, but um, but yeah, there is male on male harassment. It's more likely to happen in schools because the schools are gender segregated, middle school and up. So it's known about here that it's known about some things I can't legally say,
Yeah, yeah.
but but my students have told me that in the middle schools that
Oh,
this
bro.
happens.
Hopefully, no. Yeah, but let's leave that part, bro, because obviously, due to obvious reasons, brother. Um,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, it's just a bit too. Yeah, but brother, let's move on from there, brother. So, brother, next question for you, brother, right, is in terms of um, brother, what about women that are not Saudi, brother? The foreign women over there in Saudi Arabia, women who are, let's say, Australian, South African, white women, Asian women, are they choosing on brothers?
Uh, I would say that yeah. Sometimes there are like Filipino women. Um, Ironically, again, the Filipino women, in terms of the taste, they're kind of like the Saudi women. It's not that all of them choose brothers, but I think they're more open to brothers even than Saudi women are. In general, I would say, yeah, I think in general they're either more neutral or they're more open to brothers because of again certain similarities. Um, and Yeah, I'm sure that they can be. I've seen now they're shy, so they don't do stuff that's inappropriate. I mean, they barely show interest openly anyway, if other people are around. But they do like in terms of how they look at brothers. Yeah, they'll find reasons to speak to you legitimately, politely. They're good at finding reasons to do that. What they do is at times is they'll talk and they just stare, and then they lose track of what they're saying, and that's how you know what's going through their head. I've seen that happen to other brothers and to me. But they don't say something that's inappropriate. I mean, I'm married and they've always respected that. And quite a few of them are married too, so, and I respect that. But yeah, I would say that when it comes to them, yeah, South African women, um, when it comes to them and American brothers, if she's single and you're single, you got, I'd say you have a pretty good chance, especially if you're proud of being black, then yeah, they dig that. Um, I've been eyeballed before by some of them. And when they realized that, like when I was getting ready to go to South Africa, I was already discussing marriage with my current wife. Some of them thought, oh, well, he might go there and find a wife. But later they realized that I was in discussion with my current wife. And they said, oh, okay, so we don't have a chance. There was that. Yeah, so some of the black South African women, they dig brothers. Um, there is let's see, who else? Sometimes, man, sometimes Indian South African women, specifically from Durban, be checking for bras. I've had two cases where that happened. Uh, yeah, two cases where that was the case. The first one I wasn't gonna entertain. Not only was I still legally married to someone else, we were going through a divorce, but she was a Hindu, so we just weren't compatible. She was nice, and she was nice to look at too, but I'm Muslim, she's Hindu. We're not compatible. I don't think she knew my religion at the time. Uh, and another one at the mall less than a year ago. Um, she was really conversing. She kept finding other stuff to keep the conversation going. I was telling her about shower curtains because she was looking for some, and I told her where I could find. I told her where I knew where they were, and I said I also know where the shower rods are. They're in this Japanese store that way down this corridor in the mall. But yeah, she kept finding other reasons to talk. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes they do. Yeah, Indian South African women, specifically from Durban, have shown that. Black South African women from different parts of the country, not all of them, but when they hear they hear that you're proud of being black and you're from elsewhere, they're like, oh yeah, sure. They show some interest, choosing signals if you want to call it that. I'm trying to think who else. I can't speak on white women because, in all honesty, I have just avoided being alone with them. I'm still scared of them from growing up in the States, so I've avoided being by myself with them. Um, let's see. There was some category, and I forgot which one it is. It's gonna come back to mind in a few seconds, inshallah. Um, yes, bruv. Latin American women that work here, um, especially if they're Afro Latina. Now they might still be here on a U.S. passport, depending on what the job is. But you might have some that are that their parents are from the Dominican Republic or from Puerto Rico or Central American, and they have a black admixture or not. Some of them, yeah, they be checking for bras. Yeah, yeah, they do. Yep, one cooked some gumbo for me. She was married. And she never flirted or nothing, but she would eyeball me up and down, and I would be nice to her. We had to work together, and she never said anything inappropriate. So I didn't have any reason to verbally check her. And eventually she stopped. I think she was trying to wait till it passed. But yeah, she would eyeball me up and down for a little bit. She cooked some gumbo because I'm from the Gulf Coast, and she grew up both in I think El Salvador and Louisiana. So she made some gumbo once, and it was authentic, bro. She cooked it like a Creole woman. I'm Creole. She cooked it like that. Her husband was a black Muslim from Louisiana, also Creole, and she learned from her in-laws how to cook the gumbo. But so brothers were her type, really. Actually, yeah, brothers were her type. Um, and then there was a Dominican lady from New York that was teaching here. Yeah, I was her type. I was shocked. I was her type, but again, she wasn't Muslim, so I couldn't really do much. Nothing against her. We just weren't going to be compatible. Plus, by that point, I already knew who I wanted to marry. But yeah, yeah, they be checking, bro. It's not all the time, but if you are and mind you, I'm a middle-aged man. I was not, I wasn't skinny. You know what I mean? I wasn't in that kind of shape. So if you were a young brother, no gray in your hair, no pot belly, you in shape? Yeah, yeah. Somebody's gonna check for you from these different origins. Yeah.
So, brother, how do we go about meeting Saudi women, brother, ethnic Saudi women in Saudi Arabia? Or would you say, brother, they're a no-go? But if they are a go, where do we go to in Riyadh and Arar to meet Saudi women, brother? Is it the museum? Is it the park? Can we cold approach out there? Or is it through a friend? Or is that a no-go? You can only deal with, foreign women from Australia, England in your compound or whatever. Break it down for us, brother.
Sure. If you are, well, I would say this: Saudi women are a no-go unless you're looking to marry. And if you're looking to marry, then it's up to her and her family. Families tend to vary on that subject. Arar, I would say don't even try it because Arar is a small town. It's conservative. The Bedouin, I didn't go crazy, but every other male teacher that was from the West went crazy there. I was the only one that didn't on the project that I worked. I did not go crazy. When I left Arar, there was an African American brother Muslim that went in. He joined and he kind of took my place. He left. He absconded within 2 weeks because of how backwards the people are there. So you can imagine how they are. Even if you're trying to marry one of their daughters or nieces, you're not trying to do any wrong. You're talking marriage. Yeah, man, they give each other a hard time about that. So you're not a Saudi and you're not a Bedouin. They're like, no, bro, no. If you do, you're going to have to like pay out the wazoo, pay a dowry that's just exorbitantly expensive because of where you're not from. They do it like that. So I would say that's pretty much a no-go. If you're not Muslim, anyway, any Saudi woman's a no-go because by law they're assumed to be Muslim. Now, some of them might have left the religion and nobody knows about it, but by law they're assumed to be Muslim. They can't marry a non-Muslim anyway. So yeah, they are a no-go if you're not Muslim. If you are Muslim, then Riyadh, you could meet them different ways, but if you are interested, then you would simply say, if you're interested and she's interested, then you would say to her, look, what is your dad? Is your dad open to discuss this with a foreigner? That's the question right there. And if she says he's not, he's neutral about nationalities, then you ask her, can you get in touch with him so that the three of y'all can discuss it? If she's like, he ain't going to approve, then you just cut it off there. At that, she's just somebody that and she looks good and that's it. There's nothing else to it. That's the best way I would say to consider that. But to be honest with you, Saudi men are beginning to move away from Saudi women. Saudi women are not disrespectful. It's not because they're mean per se. Sometimes they can be, but they're spoiled. That's what the Saudi men say, and I can vouch for that. That is the case. They're very ambitious when it comes to their education and work. That is true. They're generally respectful of men that are respectful to them. That's the other thing. They're all like that. They actually, they're women that you could friend zone. Saudi women, you could friend you. They will make you want to friend zone them. You could be like, man, I'm sick of these Western chicks always trying to friend zone me. You get here, you will friend zone them because they can be good friends. But when it comes to what they want, they are spoiled. They can drive now, but a lot of them they will refuse and want you to take them everywhere. It's one thing that, they don't really want to go all these places. No, they want to go all these places and they want you to do the driving, even though they can, and they got a license, might even have a car. You drive, hand you the keys. So the other thing is that when it comes down to like what they want out of life, they're willing to get out there and work, but they're still looking for you to have a hell of a lot more than they do. And so it's like they're better students than the males are on average. Males are catching up now, but they've historically been better learners than their brothers have. And so what they do is they think they slick, but they not. I peep game. My students, males, they're getting phone calls from their sisters, their moms. Take me here, take me to the hospital, take me to the pharmacy, take me to the doctor. My class is over. We finished early. Come pick me up, take me home, stuff like that, right? Now, mind you, this is a male student of mine. If he doesn't graduate, he doesn't qualify to get married. but he's letting his sister and his mom call him in class and interrupt his education, knowing dang well that I have to mark him absent if he leaves early or if he shows up late. I have to. So these guys will fail and consider themselves real men because they're taking care of their moms and sisters, chauffeuring them around, taxing them around all the time, everywhere. That's how they view it. Meanwhile, their sisters and their moms are holding them back. So when whether she graduates or not, she can get married later. He can't get married because he didn't graduate. You see what I'm saying? These sisters and their moms know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And the other thing too is that Saudi women, when they do look for a man, they try to find a man that doesn't have a lot of sisters, because they know how they do their own brothers. So they know if he got a bunch of sisters, his sisters are going to always be calling him on the phone all the time, interrupting her time with him. So she can't always call him, take me here, take me there, do this for me, because he's got to be a husband to her and still be a big brother to his sisters, even if his sisters are older. So that's how they do. So I would say, like, if you're Muslim and she's from a big city and her parents are neutral about your nationality, and she's not materialistic to a excessive degree, and she can really understand the pressure that's on a man, okay, sure, yeah, go ahead. But all of those things are not going to be there together. They're not. So a lot of Saudi men are like, look, screw this. See, you got to get special permission if you're under 30 to marry a foreign woman. It's easy to get if you're above 30, but under it's hard to get. But there's a fine that you pay. You could do it, but you pay a fine. Well, guess what? A lot of Saudi men are looking and saying, it costs me less to go to another country that's not a Gulf country, marry one of those women, pay the fine to the government, and then that's it. We're done. She and I are married. The government's mad, but I paid the fine, and now it's all said and done. A lot of them are saying that's better. I know a Saudi man, 2019, he went and got married to a Filipina that had just become Muslim. His family didn't approve at first, but he was like, you know what? Y'all ain't helping me get married. So he went and married her. Her family treated him well. They bought a condo for her and him in Manila. But his family at first was like, no, you should have married from the Inazi tribe. And he said, screw y'all. He paid the fine to the government for violating the marriage rules. But then once he paid the fine, that's it. He and she are married, even in Saudi law. He's had it, he's got 2 kids last I heard. And finally, his family went ahead and accepted his kids because they realized the kids didn't do nothing wrong. They just mad at his choice. But he didn't pick a bad woman, so they really didn't have nothing to complain about. But, I mean, he jumped over Saudi women to marry this Filipina that just became Muslim. He jumped over his own tribe and nationality. And so, yeah, man, I can't really tell y'all to pursue these Saudi women. Let them come check for you and then meet all these qualifications.
Brother, let me ask this right. So, brother, are Saudi women wifey? Are they submissive? Are they feminine? Are they cooperative, brother? From what you see, brother, are they wifey women? And particularly, are they submissive and feminine, brother, and wifey?
I would say that they're feminine. Then they're in between. I would say that they're respectful. They're in between submissive and outspoken. Yeah, that's the best way I could describe them. They have opinions and they let you know what they are. They don't act like men do per se, but they're stubborn. Saudis in general, and I would say Gulf Arabs are just stubborn, men and women alike. So Saudi women can also be stubborn, but they don't necessarily just argue with you all the time. Some of them do that, and those are the women that wind up immediately being sent back to their dad's house. They're divorcees, and they can't get remarried because men will avoid them. So they don't try to be just mouthy all the time. But feminism is advancing here. It is. They call it nasawiya in Arabic. So yeah, feminism is here, and it's worse in the bigger cities. And so in between the women already being kind of outspoken and opinionated, and then already being stubborn, and then making strides in education, and then nasawiya making its way here, but feminism, yeah, the men are already leaving these women. So I can't say that they're wifey. They're polite. They're nice. So I do think that they're better. If you had to choose between a UK woman and a Saudi or an American woman and a Saudi, I'd say, okay, yeah, I married a Saudi woman. But their own men are like, look, they're spoiled. Again, it's not hateful, but they're spoiled. However, you do run a danger, because if you're not Saudi, you have a higher risk of her seeking you out because she's a feminist.
Oh, flipping heck. So, Bobby, you're saying that we should avoid Saudi women as passport bros?
Yeah. Actually, I am saying so. If you're going to, again, it's you should only get with one of them to avoid getting with an outright Western woman, um, or because she came checking for you and she checked all these other boxes. Okay, fine. I would say don't even try to get with them. Don't like focus in on a Saudi woman. Don't make the move trying to get with them, because they know what feminism is. Now, not all of them are feminists, but they know what it is. And they also know their men don't tolerate that. So you got some male feminists here. As a matter of fact, in big cities, these men know what the word simp means. It's an adjective, it's not a noun, so they don't have a plural form for it. But they know what the word simp means in these big cities. Um, and they describe male feminists as simps, guys that don't have any boundaries for women, but they respect women's boundaries. Uh, so that is known about. They know who Andrew Tate is, and they're learning more about what he's saying. So it's not that these things are native to here, but now I was mentioning to you how they learn things from foreigners, but they won't let foreigners dictate the change. When it comes down to these women of the West, some of them have been teachers that have taught these women these things, and then the social media that they through which they get it. Like I said, they will take these things on their own as well. They'll learn it from Western women, but they will take these things as well, and they start teaching these things to each other. And the men know it's there, and they don't tolerate it, but they don't fully understand how to fight it. And since the men are not really good listeners, they don't let me give them that kind of I try to tell them, like, look, this is what you need to do, but they don't listen that well. So no, I would say don't go checking for. I would say no, don't go checking for Saudi women. I can't say that. If she comes checking for you, see if she ticks the boxes. She probably won't. They do make good friends. They generally are not that loose. They're not loose. I'm pretty sure they're not running around with high body counts. But here's the kicker too, though. Like I said, the schools here are gender segregated. Boys and girls don't go to school together. I mentioned that before, right?
Yep.
Well, you got a few dudes that don't know how to handle that when they're in school. It's a few dudes. Most guys aren't like that, but the few that don't know how to handle it might have a lot of victims, if you catch my drift. On the women's
Yep.
side, women teachers, including my wife, have told me, and one of my student sisters told him, that it is far more common, not as predatory, but far more common on the women's campuses or in the women's schools. So you actually run the risk of her having had a taste of another woman.
Flipping heck. What?
You run that. Yeah. You don't know what the percentage is. You're not really sure what is their percentage. No one is. But my former student from a long time ago had a sister that was in a school, and she complained to him that it was 50% at her high school.
What?
And this was in a conservative area. This was in Arar that she told him that, and he told me. So, and by the way, that former student became an English teacher himself. His English is not good enough to be a teacher. I need to call his principal and tell him I love him, but he needs to take some more English classes before he teaches. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, it was like that. And this was in Arar, very conservative. So the thing is that people will go through great lengths to make sure that young men and young women don't just date. And, Islamically speaking, I understand it, but they're not going through great lengths to help them marry when they're young. So this part of life is neglected. So, you can easily find dudes that don't get down like that with dudes. We don't know what it is for women. It may be rare, it may be common. We're not sure. We don't know. So I would simply say that it's not that they're all bad women. It's not that. Mostly they're spoiled. That's it. They're ambitious. They're polite. They're nice, but they're spoiled. They want a lot out of life, and they're willing to get things themselves, but they don't understand when a man can't get what they want. You know, that's the part that's bothersome. But because you are not from here, there you run a higher risk of being a magnet for the ones that have something seriously wrong in their past. Either they're feminist, or they do have a body count and they know they don't have a hymen intact anymore, or they think you'll be more open to stuff like this. So that is the problem. It's not that all of them are like that, but you being from one of those environments, you know, like the West, you may be a magnet for the ones that have these problems and you don't know it. So that's why I would say, nope, they're good friends, great friends, but you have to really vet one. And they're going to vet you. They should, but you got to really vet one before you consider them.
So, brother, men and women can be friends there in Saudi Arabia. Is that what you're saying, brother? You can have female friends out there?
Technically, no. You can get along with women very well. Like, let's say, for instance, women that you work with. I've had lady students before, and we got along well. I liked them as people, and they liked me as a teacher and as a person. So we've gotten along well. We don't really call each other friends. As a matter of fact, in Arabic, if you say the word friend, but you say it in the form of the opposite gender, like, you know, in Spanish, there's amigo and amiga, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So you have that in Spanish. We have the same thing in Arabic, sadiq and sadiqa. If you're a man and you say sadiqa as a lady friend, it means girlfriend. It doesn't mean platonic friend. So you don't actually have a word for a platonic friend of the opposite gender in Arabic. You don't have that. You have, you know, girlfriend. There's a word for that. That's the same as the word for friend. So a woman can say my friend, my sadiqa, my amiga, and it means her friend. But if a man says the same word, that means girlfriend. If a woman says the male word for friend, that means boyfriend. So you also have, of course, husband or wife, and then you got words for your relatives. So that's really the only way to describe how you know someone. Or you can say your coworker. You can say that. You don't really have a word for a platonic friend in Arabic that they understand as just a platonic friend. You don't have that. So technically, not really. But of course, there'll be women that you work with, or you know them, or you bought things from them, or you've taken directions, and y'all get along, and you're fine with each other. Don't use the word friend per se, but that doesn't mean that you have a problem with them. You get along with them. So you can get along with women that you have a legitimate reason that you know them, like you work with them or something. Yeah, sure. That's completely normal. You can ask men or women for directions. Sometimes women are working an information desk at a mall. You ask them for directions. Yeah, perfectly fine. You may go to get a SIM card, and it's a lady working the desk, and you're polite, and it's okay. She may tell a joke. You may tell a joke. Just don't flirt, and don't make an inappropriate pass, and you know, you're good. It's fine. So if you mean a normal civility and joviality, yes, absolutely, you can. Yeah. So when I say, I'm saying in English, you might friend zone them, to mean that's how you would relate to them. That's what I mean. But I don't mean, I don't necessarily mean you would say to somebody in Arabic that y'all are friends. I don't mean that, because it wouldn't go across the same way.
Wow, brother, we have reached 40 minutes past the 3 hour mark, brother. I don't know how you feel about going on longer, or even end it here. It's up to you, brother. But if you do end it here, brother, I want to say thank you for your time, brother. But over to you, Mr. Blackman. Is there anything else you want to add about the woman part that you've missed out, or do we end it here now? Up to you completely, brother. I want to respect your time.
I appreciate that. Well, fortunately, I don't have to work tomorrow. And if anything, I really appreciate your patience, because I know I'm long-winded, and it's for a reason. But I know you've been very patient as I've tried to give very detailed answers for the benefit of the audience and for their knowledge. But I would say this about what I said about the women here. As far as I know them, they're generally good people, and they're actually not lazy. When the men are lazy, the women are not. I can say that the women have demonstrated a solid work ethic, generally speaking, across the board, though they are still spoiled in terms of the expectations of men. And they do really slick and underhanded things, even to their own brothers. Not that they hate them, but they're going to put themselves and their needs even above consideration for their own brothers a lot of times, and their dads. I've got two students. One I had to drop because he's the only son. His dad works out of the country to financially support the family, so he's the only male. His sisters could drive legally, but they keep calling him. Well, the older ones, they could drive legally, but they keep calling him to the point that he didn't even come to class most of the time. I had to drop this dude. He was going to fail otherwise. Another student, same thing. He's really Bedouin, so he does all the driving for the ladies in his family. He's the only son again, and they keep calling for rides and things like that. So he comes to class late, then he leaves early. He's absent all the time because of that. When he does show up. So do they hate their brothers? I'm sure they don't hate them, but they know what they're doing. They understand that what they're doing is they're preventing their brothers from being able to graduate so that their brothers don't get married and then have to take time and attention away from them. They know what they're doing in that regard. If you ask them, they probably sincerely would say, yeah, of course I love my brother, but they're willing to hold their own men back in certain ways so that they can get things from these men that they're capable of getting for themselves and are working and studying to be able to get for themselves. So I would say that Gulf women in general, they're just difficult. They're known to not really cook that much. They can, but they don't really cook that much. They're known to rely on maids to help them raise their kids. They're known for just being materially demanding. They want a certain number of vacations every year. And so it's like, are they hateful? No, I'm not telling you that. The Western woman is hateful in general. They think of you as a creep. But the Gulf women, I don't really mention them as wives because they still can be a heavy burden on the men, on their own men. And so I'm not saying anything out of hatred. I just don't want anybody, and of course, to marry them, you got to be Muslim anyway. But I don't want to see any Muslim men think that they're going to get certain benefits, and then they don't get these benefits, and on top of that, they got to do a hell of a lot more to stay married to her than what they previously would have expected. Like I said, they're verbally polite. That is the case. They may not obey you, but they wouldn't just say, I'm going to, like, they don't do the opposite of what you say just because you said do it, like the Westernisha. But they don't necessarily obey you. That's the thing. They want a lot. So, I'm telling y'all how life is here. But yeah, it's, if you're looking for coupling up, if you're looking to start a family, it's the foreign women. They got Muslim women from other places here that are nice, that will appreciate you, that will treat you better. If you're a good leader, they'll listen to you. And if you're not one, they probably wouldn't know the difference, and they might listen. They probably will know the difference. But in terms of, you got to meet responsibilities, but they still don't feel like they have to listen. And that's not a headache that you need. It's just, you get some of the same headaches that you would from a Westernisha, just with a lot more politeness wrapped around it. That's really what I'm taking a long time to say. So that's what y'all need to know about the women here. I've taught them as students. They were good. They'll show up for work on time a lot of times. They're actually better workers than they are wives on average. So, I'll take another question about the women though, from you or from a super chatter.
Brother, what about Christian women, brother, in Saudi? Can we find them there, or is that very small?
They're not the majority, certainly, but you can find, as an expat, you would be able to find Christian women. If you are, let's say, if you're in education, or even if you're doing something else that's skilled and you live on a compound, you're likely to be around them, find them, to be able to. The other thing too is that, like I said, there are quite a few people from the Philippines here. They're Catholic on average. And they work many jobs, not just maids. They work a lot of jobs, different ones. Nurses. So yeah, you can find them. There are enough for the Christian men here, or the non-Muslim men, to be able to find. You certainly can. In the Emirates, maybe even more so. More of them. Like I said, I haven't been to Qatar, so I don't know the availability. Uh, but yeah, you can. It's actually it's like if you're a non-Muslim man and you come out here, you're not doomed to stay by yourself. It's not like that. You can't fornicate and they find out about it. You probably could get away with it. I don't recommend it. You might get away with it depending on where you are. But you can uh, you can obey the law and still find someone and start a married life with someone that believes what you believe. You can do it, and it's been done before.
But brother, so I'm guessing in the compounds, that's where things get down, men and women in these compounds, Western compounds, right?
It's where you could probably do it with it's where where it could be the case. To be honest with you, man, as far as I know, it's really not the case though. It's not that common. As far as my understanding, from what I can see, I have never heard the sounds of coitus coming any from anybody anywhere, any rooms. I've never heard it, even when they're married. I never have. Um, Most of the people here actually obey the rules. So if they're not married, they actually don't, you don't hear about them fornicating. Sometimes they will say, well, they do, but they go somewhere else to do it. So that, on vacation, they may fly somewhere else and fornicate, whether it's a man or a woman. Generally, it's like that. So people actually, I think most people here are not fornicating. Foreign or citizen, I think they're not. It seems like they're not, even on the compounds. So it's like this: on the compounds, the police will come if there's an emergency and they're called. They don't just do a regular patrol here, you see. So if people were going to do something like that, they have a high chance of getting away with doing that here. But people don't really seem to be doing that though. These are mostly professionals, and they would rather avoid that and not bring that kind of attention to the compounds. So it's where it could happen, but you don't really see it. You don't hear about it even.
Amazing, Mr. Black Mind. Thank you for a great stream, brother. Almost 4 hours. I think you must be tired, bro. So, Mr. Black Mind, do you have any closing statements, brother, before we wrap up the stream, brother?
Well, I want to say, listen, I appreciate your patience. I really do. I know I went 4 hours, and I'm shocked at how tired I'm not, actually. But I really do appreciate you being patient with me these 4 hours and making this time for me. I know it was hard to schedule, and it wasn't your fault or mine. It was just work and travel that I had to do. But you were patient with me, and I hope that I made it worthwhile for your audience and really gave them a good look as to what it's like living and working here. I hope that I was able to help out both SYSBM and Passport Bros. And I would like to see Black men in general combine our skills of education and IT. So I know that you teach IT, and I may ask you some questions later on about it. I try to help my son figure out which IT was the closest to his skill set, but he seems to be interested not really in IT, more so in graphics. But I hope that I was able to do justice to your audience too, because you certainly helped my audience, and you did help my exposure too. So I hope I was able to do the same thing for you in kind.
No, brother. Thank you very much, Mr. Black Man. Much appreciated, bro. Much appreciated. So, brothers, another great live stream. I want to say thank you to Mr. Black Mind for this incredible breakdown in regards to Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much, bro. Much appreciated. I think we got to do a part 2, bro, but only on the woman part in the future, bro. So once you're ready, brother, let me know. I think there's still some more digging I want to do about Saudi women, but we're at 4 hours, bro. I'm tired, bro, and I got a stream in 2 hours from now. I got put in, bro. So, I got to get some rest, bro.
Oh man, listen, I know you know what Red Bull is. We all do, right?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to have to drink some Black Bull, sir. Now, do you know what that is?
No, not at all, bro. Not at all. What is that?
All right. So Black Bull is when you take Red Bull and you're going to have to pour some black coffee into it and maybe a shot of espresso. It'll turn black, so it has a Red Bull like taste, but you have extra caffeine in it. You're going to need that, sir, because I didn't know that you had another live stream in 2 hours. I'm so sorry about that. Because I really kept you up. Yeah, you're going to be tired, and I feel guilty now at this point. But yes, I look forward to a part two. And I'll take questions about the women. However, I will try to give y'all a view as to what it's like with them here, as much as a foreigner could know about them, and in countries next door. So I'm not trying to paint it as all doom and gloom. It's just that the better options are probably going to be in places that are a short flight from here, but not exactly here. And I'll try to fill the audience in more on that the next time, inshallah.
Awesome. Thank you, bro. Thank you, brother. So, brothers, I will see you, brothers, in 2 hours for Puerto Rico. Mr. Black Man, thank you again for your time, brother. Much appreciated, bro. And brothers, have a great 2 hours ahead. I'll see you soon. Thank you so